Start out with staff reports, and then we progress to the minutes, and then we offer a period of time where the public can comment. We have no public hearings tonight. We cover what we call our administrative business items, where the council is either discussing something or we're making a determination. A resolution is in accordance with our existing city code. Or legislative items typically involve policy changes to our city code by means of an ordinance. And once we're through that, we go through council reports, and we always have executive session notice in case there's an issue we need to go into executive session. Before, state code's pretty clear on what we can go into executive session to discuss or not. And I don't think we have anything this evening. Our city attorney asked if we needed him, and he didn't have anything to update us on, so he is not here. But let's go ahead with our staff reports, and we typically start out with our city engineer, and if he's here, and he's not, Max Pierce, but our city public works director is here. Rob, he's got a brief report for us, and tell us what's going on out in the cold world.
Well, January was very busy, but February shaped up to be a whole lot better, thank goodness. We had a lot of plows and a lot of fuel getting burned on the roads last month. But we're on a good track for February, so that's ironing things out in a nice way. So we're doing all right in that aspect. The two projects that are upcoming, we've got the Spring Creek Crossing, the West Crossing, if people know it by, that connects the charter school to First West. We put that out to bid. We had 7 people interested, and all 7 of them that attended the pre-bid also submitted bids. We just got those yesterday, so we're going to take some time to go through them really closely. There's kind of a wide range there, so we'll analyze them, make sure they cross their T's and dotted their I's, and hopefully have a recommendation for you next council meeting to get them started as soon as possible. So the other one is the reservoir that we talked about for a very long time. I finally got a large packet of the Zone 2 reservoir up there as far as the preliminary plans and specs and stuff. So we'll start going through that and redlining it. Hopefully we can get that underway and built within a year. Any questions on any of that?
Questions for Rob?
I have one there.
Sure.
I'm not totally familiar where you're going to locate that Zone 2 reservoir. Is that the one on the Lichty's property?
No.
Okay.
This one will be just north of Stan Chickett's house, almost directly. Do you know where?
I am familiar with that area.
Callback.
Yep.
And
yeah, Ron Callback.
yeah, we'll be directly east of Ed Callback's house,
or Ed
just
Callback.
north of Stan's house.
Okay. Out by the deer
Does that
fence.
help everybody?
At that same level as Red's.
Correct. Identical. The overflows should match identically, so that they're one and the same.
Okay. And how big a tank?
1.5 million.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any more questions for Rob?
It's not really a question, but it's just a comment. With the Spring Creek Crossing, I've been in communication with the principal at River Heights Elementary, and she was wanting you to coordinate with the River Heights Public Works about sidewalks connection. Sorry.
Okay. We talked a lot about the potential of relocating the current crosswalk that's at First West and 280 North, and more or less shifting that one to the north and crossing there at Spring Creek Parkway.
Once it's open?
Yeah, I think what it really entails is because of the construction schedule with this project and school, we're going to try to watch and see how that plays out, leaving it alone for now, and then addressing if we have any concerns or issues the next summer between the school season.
Okay.
There's a lot of what ifs and body counts and
Sure.
what it's really going to entail to make a change that's fairly expensive and extensive to make that change, which if it's necessary we'll know better within that first little while and watch and see what happens.
Rob, what's the timing of construction on that crossing?
Well, there's a stream alteration permit that's kind of putting a wrinkle in pushing it fast because of the spring waters. Stream alteration permits get a little bit picky about doing construction near streams during the high flows, and where spring is just kind of right around the corner. It might push the start date a little off. So typically our high flows are mid-June. So we might be 1st of July before we begin, but I don't foresee it being a very long, time-consuming project. So we should be done before school starts. At least that's my hope.
Can you tell us what the high and low bids are?
It ranged between, I don't remember exact, but it was low was roughly 176 and high was 367. And a whole bunch that were in the 220 range.
The engineering estimate was 291.
There was some, the engineering
So
estimate I think had some property acquisition that roped into it, and things like that are now taken care of.
Still going to come out way ahead. Good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Scarlett?
So mine's relatively short. You can find the minutes to boards and commissions for the Planning Commission, Administrative Land Use Authority, Historic Preservation and Appeal Authority. The agendas, the agenda packets, and the minutes are available on the Utah Public Notice website and the city's website. And then during January, the Planning Commission held one meeting on January 22nd. The Administrative Land Use Authority met on January 7th, 16th, 28th, and 29th, and the Historic Preservation Commission met on January 21st. The Appeal Authority did not meet. Our RAPS grant application is coming due. In 2019, the city was awarded $70,000 for additional pickleball courts for Elma Lenhart Park. We are planning to request the balance of the project in our 2020 RAPS application. Just a reminder, if there's anything that you would like to have on the website or a message you would like sent via Facebook or Twitter, please send me an email and copy Ryan so that we make sure that we get that information to Beth and Jesse, and we can get those things on our website and out on our social media. And I just always update where we're at with our subscribers to the pipeline. We are slowly growing. We're up to 752 subscribers. But if you talk to people and they are someone that uses text and email, particularly on their mobile devices, that's a great way for them to get notification is through that pipeline. We try really hard not to bombard them. If they only sign up for recreation, they only get recreation information. If they sign up for newsletters, they get the newsletter information. And then if there's an urgent notification, if they're signed up for that, they get that. But we are respectful of their time, and we try and send out to them what they've asked for and not bombard them with additional information. So, unless you have questions.
Are those notifications citywide?
They're only to the people that have signed up.
Well, but I guess what I'm asking, like, if there was a water leak or a problem in a specific area, would it send out to a specific area?
Yes, it actually does. We had our program designed with a city map, and that's why on our program, when you sign up for it, you have to put an address in. Now, if there's non-residents that want recreation information or things like that, I think it says either non-resident or no Providence address. They pick that field. But on all the others, they pick their address. Then it goes onto a map. If Rob has a water leak, we look up the area where the water leak is, and we can highlight that, and it will automatically pull up the numbers that have signed up in that area, and we send to that specific area. We don't send citywide unless it is a citywide problem.
But it only goes to those people that signed up.
Yes,
We can designate an
yeah,
area on the
yeah.
map.
right. There might be 10 homes in the area, but if only 4 people have signed up, then it only goes to those 4 people. We try and notify them with hangers and other things when we're going to shut water off. But we do that's one reason why we'd like to see more people sign up for it, is so that we can get those messages to them even when they're at work and the water's going out. It's a little late sometimes to come home and find the door knocker. So,
So I think Josh asked this last time about editing or checking our subscription. I tried that too. Is the best way to make sure I'm signed up for everything that I want to be to resubmit? Or is there a way to edit or to check our status in the pipeline?
I talked with him and he said when you go on your account, you should be able to delete, like if you were signed up for recreation and you don't want the recreations anymore, you should be able to delete that recreation line item. If you can't, if it doesn't show up that way, I will talk to him and say the program's not working right.
So I'm in there right now.
There's no way to get into your.
Yeah, I don't know how to like
It doesn't
Sign
give you the
in.
list again?
to sign in. It does give me the
Oh.
list. I can resubscribe, but I can't sign into my account to see, or I'm not sure how or where to sign in.
Okay, I will tell him that there's
It's
a
just
missing
not
link.
quite user friendly enough for me.
Okay, I apologize. I did follow up with it, but I didn't get it.
Less intelligent.
I didn't get it
There's
out.
a sliding scale.
I obviously didn't get enough information, so I will go back and get some more information for you.
Yeah, just, okay,
Oh.
thank you.
Actually, I do know too, if you want to unsubscribe, then if you haven't deleted one, if you get a text from Recreation and you don't want it, then you can click stop.
Yes, yeah, so unsubscribing is easy, but like checking what
What
I'm
I
subscribed to or adding subscriptions.
Okay, I will find out from him on that.
Thank you.
Again, thanks. Anything
Carla,
else?
I'm wondering if other people have similar problems. Perhaps we can put some instructions out there, say, if you want.
Right,
Just how to sign on, how to make changes, how to establish a new connection.
I will follow up with Doug and we'll get
I'm sure
something,
Doug's got something out
put
there.
it on our website so that people can find out.
Yeah, and then maybe another push in the newsletter with soccer coming up.
I'm sorry?
I thought I've seen the sign up link in the newsletter. Is it?
It's been there
It's
several
It's in there
times.
quite often.
Okay.
I
Just
just,
an explanation on editing maybe,
right, if I can get that put together, we'll get it in the March newsletter.
or April, or
Okay,
May.
all right.
Or all of the above.
Anything else?
Any more questions for Scarlett?
Thank you.
Okay. Brian?
So I'll stand in just a minute, but I wanted to show you something here on the screens, and that's why I'm going to sit for just a second. Can you see? Is it?
No, it's not.
Your
screen's not big.
I saw you turn it on.
If it won't come on, Jesse, we can angle one of the TVs. One towards the audience and one towards the council.
See that?
Mhm.
Is it working? Okay. That's all right. That's all right. Go a little look behind me. So we've been working to try to get our system digitized and bring that information into what's called a GIS mapping. So what we have here, just to kind of give you an idea, is we have different types of information. So here's sidewalks. We can go into the map. And I don't know how many, if you've ever used, let's see if it goes in. No, it won't work. All that build up and it won't. It's frozen.
Isn't technology absolutely wonderful?
Everyone get off your internet.
Sometimes. When I use it.
Is it on?
I always remind myself how long it would take if I didn't have the technology, even though it's slowing down.
Anyway, it doesn't look like it's gonna do it.
Well, it looked pretty good
Seems
when
like-
you had it there.
Seemed like magic before.
Works like magic. What you told me.
So, let's see if it comes back up. If it does, then we'll go through that. But a couple of things we've been working on. You'll see in your packet we have quite a few items that have culminated into that. One of those is our personnel policies and procedures. One of the things that I kind of sent out information to the group, but so that we're looking forward to the state auditor's office is going to come down with the new regulation. They've been talking about it for a few years. They're going to require a fraud risk assessment of all cities. And in place of that fraud risk assessment, they're going to require that we have certain policies in place. So we've gone through, I've gone through all of those policies to make sure those are all implemented in the policy manual you'll review later. We've reviewed, it's been audited by a human resource firm brought in. They kind of helped me review and make sure that any recommended policies. So I've been working on that one. I've also gone through with the state auditor's office and evaluated the segregation of duties. So we've just completed a segregation of duties audit that basically says, is there a way that any task can be done by, too many tasks being done by one person creates a risk. And so we're working to try to mitigate all of those risks. So that was one of the things we're just finishing between the adoption of new policies and implementation of those and the modification of a few tasks from the staff and who does what, little tweaks there. I believe that we will be able to get 100% or the top ranking for the state auditor's office. I think we're prepared when that rolls out. It will be required to submit. They expect to have that adopted by April, and by our audit, the fiscal year end audit of June, we'll have to report that assessment to the state. So we're ahead of the game where we want to be, and hopefully we can get through those and be able to have that. So that's some of it. We have tonight we'll hear, and we've been pushing to complete or at least consolidate and get ready for your consideration the general plan. So you'll hear more about that tonight. We'll talk more about fiber tonight, and we've met. I've also met with Utopia this last couple of days, and got some more information there as we have that discussion. So anyway, working through a number of items, making improvements, making different little improvements that we can make more efficient and improve our system, and be able to find ways that we can be better as a staff and as a city. So that's where I'm working. So if there's any questions on any particular ones, hopefully you're getting regular information to be able to digest as things go along. So any questions for me?
I have one. Is the fraud risk assessment, is this a new instrument that the auditor's office has put out, or has it been in place previously?
So it is expected to be implemented or adopted April. They have been talking about it, so it's been talked about. It's been proposed, discussed.
That's what I was wondering, because it was dated April 2019, so I was wondering if it had been in place previously.
It hasn't been mandated previously. It has been best practice previously. It just hasn't been mandated.
Okay.
So at this point, it is expected that it will become mandatory this year. So,
on the staff reports, I was looking for the planning commission report about the cross sections.
yeah, so planning and zoning met, discussed. They reviewed the cross sections. Our engineer was there and a number of other people were there, had a very good discussion. And in the end, the Planning Commission recommended no change. And so it doesn't come back as an agenda for the council issue. You want to have something, but from them, their recommendation was they reviewed it. They were satisfied with what the current spot is, the current partial cross section, and so they took a vote and said that they'd prefer to just keep it. So
Thank you.
that's why it's up. Other questions?
Any more questions for Ryan?
I just want to express gratitude. Ryan answers emails on the weekends, late at night, early in the mornings. He is putting in so much time. Thank you.
Well, I try to answer them as diligently as I can, and sometimes it is on the weekends. So.
Thank you.
I tried to write them at the weirdest times just to see if I'll get a response from you.
And an apology for responding at a weird time.
And you did. You got a response. So anyway, and I will get. Well, I told you I'd get yours.
So I think Ryan works the hours he does, so there's a good amount of time, the hours he puts in a day, where he's not disturbed with other staff and phone calls. But Ryan's doing what I call the GIS is a good reflection of that, and all of the control issues. I term it a deep dive into how we operate, why we operate the way we operate, and is it efficient the way we operate.
Thank you.
So he's got taken on a lot on his plate, on his own. He's just said, you know what, you can take a close look at this. I'm diving deep into it, and he does.
Let's do it.
The staff has been very good to be supportive of that. You have a very good staff.
I keep forgetting to ask you a question. We submitted a grant application for federal money.
Yes.
What's the timing on the notification of that?
We won't hear until they won't meet until middle of April to consider applications. So we probably won't hear until May. So it is a time frame, but we do have that out there. And we're looking for other things. But at this point, it's usually bidding. We have at least investigated a few other options, but at this point, that's the one we have submitted. So,
Good. Thank you.
Good.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay.
And you can see the map. It's up. It's true.
Now
That's real. It's true.
Can you show us what's on the map, populated on that map? Is this our GIS or is this the county GIS?
This is our GIS data. So this particular one, what we have in red is all of our sidewalks. So we have mapped, and we have a fledgling GIS intern with us. So he's done great. But we have been able to map. So on this, we have gotten data from the state as far as the detail. So it will zoom farther than regular Google Earth. So this just zooms a little bit farther than that. We have all of our sidewalks mapped on this particular one. Some of the other things we have mapped is our water system. We have mapped. We've never had mapped digitally before. It has been on paper, but we have mapped our sewer system. We've started to map things in our storm drain system. We have our snowplow map mapped online and a number of other things, so that we're making some major headway. The benefits of having a mapping system is then we can make sure the data is up to date. So what happens oftentimes is if we don't hold the data, we think that our engineer that has done a project has updated it somewhere. And they've done a piece here, a piece there. We know what is available and what's around when we have our own data in-house and we can access it. So we have our planning and zoning stuff, so when we go to make changes to that, we have that access. We have access to the county's data as well, some of the CMPO, some of the different entities. We can bring that in and be able to overlay all those different layers on it. So at this point and this stage of it, what I wanted to do is to show you, because it's not outward facing at this point. It is an internal resource, and so in order for you to be able to see and and visualize what we talk about when we talk about these things. I wanted to show you a visual. But at this point, it's really inward facing. We don't want general populace to have access to our water lines, our sewer lines, and where our tanks are, and some of those things. We don't want to have that until either we're fully ready and we know that that's right. Oftentimes, it's not that we hide data, but it's the misinterpretation that says if you put it out there, the worry is somebody will try to use it in place of your 811, your blue sticks. And so that's why it's not that we don't want people to know where stuff is and we're worried and freaking out. It's that we don't want the system that is in place out there to identify stuff to be utilized and not have them go through the blue sticks process, because that's where they should know where their utilities are. This is more of a planning perspective and saying, hey, from our data, how do we plan? And at some point we may get planning and zoning members to be able to pull that up or utilize in different manner. But that's kind of why it's the way it does. It's not secretive. It's just we don't want the general populace to use it the wrong way. So,
Question regarding some of the stormwater uses some of the existing irrigation lines. Will they be included as part of the stormwater, and will there be any other irrigation lines included in this general mapping, or will that not be included? Just out of curiosity.
Good question. When we get to master planning and identifying through those means, that will be a question of whether we want to include that or not.
Okay.
But that's when we get down into that. This does not. We don't have that kind of map.
Okay.
We also have things like, for public works purposes, pressure reduction valves. Our culinary system's got other valves in different parts of the city. I do know Public Works goes out and they exercise the valves every year just so they don't freeze up. Not from a temperature standpoint, where our sewer line accesses are. So eventually, if we have a contractor who comes to the city and this is available to them, they can look at it and they can see, for example, Ryan mentioned sidewalks. We said part of the city, we want sidewalks done. We can refer them to the map and they can look at it and say, we want this part of the city done, we want you to bid on it. If there's bidders out there, then they all have access to the same information. They don't have to go out in the field. We've already, as Ryan said, we'll put it out there once it's perfected and we're sure it's accurate. So it's going to save the city staff, public works staff, a lot of time. It's going to make their job easier. It'll be a public record. We're going to talk about fiber in a bit. But it'd be nice to know, and Rob wants to know, if we're going to put in utilities, and whoever's putting in utilities for us, is where they're going to go and what other utility lines might be a possible obstacle. So it'll be a great resource once it's all up and running and Rob's nodding his head. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Rob. All right. Everyone will bear with us. We're going to go on to approval of the minutes from January council meeting. We had one council meeting on the 15th. And I was looking for council input on any changes may have come to their attention necessary, so it's an accurate public record. And we have 10 pages. And I need a motion to approve the minutes in a second, and then we can have a further discussion. I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 15th.
I move that we approve the minutes from Wednesday, January 15th, 2020.
Second.
Motion from Councilwoman Kirk, second from Councilwoman Seeley. Discussion. Anyone see any corrections that we need to make? Everybody probably knows that Jesse does this. And as time has gone on, we find fewer and fewer corrections necessary because he's learned everybody's voice, learned how things are spelled properly, the context of which we were having a discussion. So,
Good job.
Thank you. I only saw one thing that I was curious about. When we went into executive session, Councilman Speth recused himself or left, or he didn't attend executive session. But he's here as voting to go in and come out, and close, and leave.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that, and I left probably before that happened. So
So he just would have been absent for the portion
With the close.
with
For
the
the-
water for the close.
close,
He was
yeah.
there for the remainder.
Yeah, he was there for the other part, but
you did vote to go into executive session, right?
I did.
Okay,
I
but
can't
then not
remember
to leave it
exactly.
and not to leave the meeting. Okay.
Carrie, you had something?
I can't find it. It was really minor, so I didn't write it down when I read through. So.
Anyone else? Hearing none, seeing none. We vote to approve the minutes of January 15th. All in favor?
Aye.
Nay? Vote carries unanimously. Thank you. So we are through the approval of the minutes, and we move on to public comments. Citizens may appear before the council to express their views on issues within the city's jurisdiction. Comments will be addressed to the council. Remarks limited to 3 minutes per person. Total time allotted for public comment is 15 minutes. City council may act on an item if it arose subsequent to the posting of this agenda and the council determines that an emergency exists. So if we open this up, we invite comments from the public, anyone who'd like to speak. We've had previous requests that we time public comment, so we make sure that everyone has a chance within the allotted time period. So let's go ahead and open public comment. Anyone who'd like to address the council? Raise your hand, come up here, give us your name, and okay, I don't see any hands raised. So we'll go ahead and close the public comment portion and we'll move on. We have no public hearing this evening. So we'll go through the administrative items. Item number 1 is a discussion item. And the city staff is looking for some general guidance and direction from the council as to proceed, how to proceed. Providence City Council will discuss options for fiber installation and services. This discussion started sometime last year. Since Ryan has been here, we've introduced an additional element to the discussion, and Ryan knows more about it than I do. Ryan, will you lead us in this discussion with the council and what we want to cover here? I know that an email went out. Councilwoman Kirk sent it out as a draft, and Ryan and I worked on it. We sent out a revised draft to the council, and we said, here are options. Here's some considerations. Here's some things we need to think about. Here's some companies we've talked to. And the question is, how do we want to proceed from this point forward? So that's where we're at today.
Sure, and Councilwoman Kirk, feel
Please.
free to put it in as much as you want, so a few things to give a little bit of history. We have had Utopia here at the city. They did a presentation, and some of you were present at that. Maybe not as council, some as council. Their model is to come in to build a fiber network. At that point, they own the network. The city bonds for that and backs it. And if not enough people don't sign on, then the council, the city guarantees the bond up to that point. So that is one. We were approached by American Fork and by the previous CEO of Utopia, Todd Marriott. They came, they met with us and said, hey, we have a different option. This option is that we could have a utility option. The city could own the infrastructure, and with that ownership, then if there is enough that sign on, you can not only cover your debts because you're going to guarantee that anyway, but if there's any upswing or profit that comes from it, then there's this option. And would you consider? They had an interlocal that's called Light Hub. That's the name of their interlocal. At this point, American Fork is the sole person inside of it, and they had Kaysville with some issues, left that interlocal at the time. They're working to try to build up cities that would be interested in this slightly different model. In order to see that, I looked at that and said, there are some things that are big obstacles in order to go out on our own and try to accomplish. I knew of a firm that provided fiber optics and to a fairly good sized area out in the Uinta Basin. And so I reached out and said, if this option viable, could it work out, and could you fill in the gaps of what we don't have? At this point, we don't have workforce that the city doesn't have a workforce that cuts fiber, installs fiber, does those kind of things. They responded and said, yeah, we could do that. We could come and look at it. And so at that point, it made it so that having that as being an actual viable option that we could. So with the assignments, Councilwoman Kirk came, met with Strata with us, visited them, kind of get a little bit more information about them, and we discussed, and as has been said, a question and answer was sent out, kind of outlining some of that. We kind of defined that there's a few different spots that we really need to understand. The first question comes is, are we okay letting the current process naturally develop of the Comcast, whoever the fiber providers are in the area, just to let them naturally go and we don't step in? If we're good with that, then any other option we just leave alone. And if we want another option, we say, you know what, that's just not where we want to go, then we have a few other options, and that's what we wanted to make sure. But realistically, at this point, my hope of the council is to narrow down some options and say, here's what we want you to accomplish, and then I can work to get that accomplished for you. But want to take the broad range of options and start to narrow that down. And that's kind of what I think the point is. And I don't know whether I've covered enough or not enough, but Councilwoman, if you have anything to add to that I summarized okay?
Just addressing questions.
I have a couple.
Sure.
So if we do the strata, that means that's the same as like a Comcast or a CenturyLink, right? The reason for Utopia, in my mind, would be that it would provide our residents with several options and pricing that they could choose from. So it's not more of a fixed pricing. Whereas right now, frankly, our options are not great and our pricing is not great. But the Utopia would bring in 15 different options that we could choose from, which creates competition, and I think that's good. But Strata is not going to create that competition, is it?
So they will do the same back end stuff and create that and link it so that it has so the front end will be very similar to Utopia, saying, hey, we can have an open network. They can provide ISP, but they don't have to. We can get them from start to end, or we can pair out any piece we want. It's kind of like a cafeteria. They can give you the whole buffet, but if you only want dessert, that's okay. But yes, we intend to have an open network that multiple ISPs, similar to what Utopia would do. That would be the end result. Yes, that's what our hope is.
And then I'm convinced, and from the studies that we did, I've told Ryan on the phone, I have talked this fiber. I am so over it. After all of last year, so sick of the discussions. That was bad of me to say, but I We've discussed so many times about the 30%, and I'm convinced from what I've learned, just so that you guys know, and the studies and the survey, that we would easily be able to get the 30%. So those are my only two comments. I didn't have the big push for it. I didn't know that it was, I don't know how necessary it is. I'm not
Right.
happy with my current internet.
I'm for competition. I'm for seeing us have an alternative here in the city. I would like to see the alternative to choose fiber optics as a way of competing with Comcast. I have a lot of concern because the devil's in the detail with Strata. Utopia seems to be a package. Yes, we pay for it. They've got it worked out. They've got a larger range of people they supply, therefore they can deal with it on a different financial basis. I think we have to, if we're going to look at Strata, and the way I understand it, I could be wrong, is that they'll come in, install all the same stuff, and be ready to go. Eventually, we take it over.
If that's what we want, yes. That's
And
correct.
there's the devil in the detail, because then we have to have such things as the debt service, which will be part of the bill. That'll be ongoing. Will be either. It wouldn't be if we took Utopia. We've got to have service vehicles, personnel. We've got to know how to install and cut fiber optics, install to homes. We got to be able to put boxes in homes and be able to deal with that sort of thing. And if we go to a build out of a reasonable number, now the 30% would probably be easy. We're not going to get 100%. How many homes do we have? 2,700 homes?
Not quite, but pretty close.
Right thereabouts. Okay, if we go to 60% build out on our fiber optics service, have we got enough home to really turn a decent profit? That's what I don't know. That's where I don't know what the profit margin is on when we cross 30%. Is it going to be a profit margin that's going to be eaten up by all the things that we have to do in the detail to be able to say, quote, service this, or is there real profit beyond the 30%? In other words, is that really going to take care of buying the vehicles, have the personnel, have the sheds, have the equipment, and all that stuff, people on staff when the internet goes down, and all that, or we get a break?
So let me answer a few of those questions if I can. So talking with Utopia, $30 is what they expect the infrastructure to be at 30% of your build out. So if your infrastructure, and there will be some increase as you get more, because if you have the installing it to the house, there's a little bit of that, but your main line is all taken care of. So at that point, we say if 30% pays it, and it's $5.2 million at 30%, if we have 60%, then we would expect somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 million. If you're thinking 60%, because then your infrastructure, most of your mainline infrastructure is installed, so you're just connecting to the house. So at that point, the 30% at $30 covers the vast majority, the 4.2 million of the bill. So the last million is to the house, so that would increase, but the 4.2 is pretty well what we think it would cost to build it out.
That would service the debt.
It would service the debt.
And pay for our part in maintaining the system.
So that's the next piece. So
okay.
It costs $23.50 approximately for UIA Utopia to manage to manage the system. That's what they figure it costs, is $23.50 per connection. That's kind of their models, their expectation. I don't know that there's a lot of margin or profit in that side. So at that point, unless we can find a way to do it cheaper or more efficient, then that's our option. At least we would have motivation to do that. I'm sure they're making some. They have, just to give an idea, they told me they had 15,000 customers. And just as a comparison, not that they're all fiber customers, but Strata has 60,000. So just to give a comparison of the size of organizations, Strata is actually a larger organization as a whole of number of customers it services than Utopia. Now again, that's not all fiber.
Do we leave Strata at some point in time and take over management on our own?
We sure can. If
Is
we
that
didn't
our
want
goal?
to, I would say if we're going to get into that market, that would be a eventual goal.
But our
But it doesn't have to
potential
be.
is 2,700 and not even that much. Because we're within the city.
2,700
And
at
if
that
we got
point.
18, I mean, if we got 2/3, we'd be about, what, 18 or thereabouts? I don't know.
Right.
22,000.
Right.
Yeah. And so I'm just wondering if all the additional costs that we're going to incur to leave Strata and make this a money-making thing for us is going to be sufficient with the upper limit of customers that we have to be able to make this cost effective.
Understood. That's why I'm looking for you to feed. I'm just giving you the data. One other thing I would share with you that I did learn this week is the Woodland Hills model is slightly different, and we haven't presented that. But Woodland Hills is a UIA, which is a Utopia model, or under them. And Woodland Hills purchased all of the infrastructure. So if they had more people sign on, similar to the other model that we're talking about, the Strata that keeps coming up, it doesn't have to be them. It's just that's a company I found to provide that bridge. But they also have of the 18 cities they have, this one city actually went out. They determined and purchased the infrastructure, and so the infrastructure's on that $30. If they have 60%, and I think they have 70% on their side, so they did really well, and so they can pay it off in half the time, and then once it's paid off, that $30 maintains. So there is benefit. Utopia can do almost all of what we had looked at to bridge with Strata, and we can get some of the infrastructure profit. I think that's where the profit, if there is a profit, I think it's in the infrastructure side. That we get the infrastructure put in, we get it paid over 20 years with 30% build out. If we build out more than that gets to be invested back. And so Utopia has a slightly different one. You can't, it's not as big of a cafeteria style. So this is just one slight modification, but it is also one that I just had found out about and hadn't really known until it was yesterday that I met with them. Was it yesterday I talked? Yeah, I think it was yesterday we talked, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just found that out yesterday, so it's not like I'm trying to bring something up, but it's just barely learning, so I haven't vetted that out. But that is another option. So, but again, if we want to go down us own the infrastructure, I think we have a few options. If we say it's not worth it to us, then I say, hey, you know what? Let's leave it alone. But
I had some thoughts, just because I'm assuming you want our feedback as well on this. I view this from both as a services problem and as a business problem. I think it's important to recognize both of those because the evaluation criteria is different. The services problem, I'm probably with Councilwoman Eck. I'm not in an amorous relationship with Xfinity or Comcast either. Okay, I'm not crazy about them. And do we want to provide this service to our residents? Do we think this will make Providence a nicer place to live? Okay, it's going to be a qualitative assessment whether or not we want to do that. But the business side is in a completely different one. And on this one, I take the view. My assumption here is that government is historically bad at competing with private business, and this is someone who likes to compete. But we're just not great at it. There's an assumption in the model with the 30% take rate, and that is that the pricing for the competition will remain fixed. And I think it's likely to see that we'll see CenturyLink or Comcast adjust their pricing and maybe change our model, and the take rate might be different than what we expect. That may be okay. I don't know what Comcast or Xfinity's cost structure looks like, but I think it's a fair assumption that they might take retaliatory measures, okay, to some degree affecting our take rate. So in calculating the business problem, I think we need to look at, if we're going to invest some money here, we want to look at what the internal rate of return of our investment would be. And I don't think we can just say, oh, we're going to hit this 30% mark. I think we have to say, what is the bond payment that we're guaranteeing, and what is the potential upside for return on that? And do we anticipate, given our survey, if that's what was the survey, 60% take rate? What did we, something along those lines? I think it was about 50%. If we use that as an upper bound for a take rate, then we can calculate a return on that investment. And if we were a business, that's the way we would approach the problem, you know. So I would like to see us calculate that internal rate of return. I'd like to see us run that, what that is in terms of guaranteeing the bond payment. To Brett's, Councilman Speth's point, what is the potential upside in here? And that's ignoring what the long-term cost consequences may be, not knowing what it would take to get into the fiber business. I'm handy, but I didn't sign on to go ahead and install fiber, you know, when I joined as a council person. I'm not wrong to. So I just bring that up as that's what I've been thinking through in this, both as a services standpoint and a business standpoint. I tend to like to take risks, but when I'm taking risks on behalf of citizens and citizens' money, I'm much more conservative than I would be otherwise, and so that's kind of where I'm sitting. So.
One more question, if I may.
Sure.
Is there a deterioration or depreciation on the infrastructure? In other words,
Yeah, I mean, obviously all infrastructure deteriorates over periods of time, whether that's conduit deteriorates at a slower pace, but the IT and the infrastructure is, as far as modems or NIC cards or the items that are our network side, obviously those will have some obsolescence like any computer equipment. So there is some absolutely that will depreciate. Some of the infrastructure, I mean, a water line, you depreciate over a 40 to 50 year life. So I mean, a PVC water line is a long life. That's not to say that it doesn't depreciate.
and would we be installing a fiber optic system that would meet maximum build out of the city?
Could it have the capacity for the maximum build out? Yeah, absolutely. I think that the bandwidth was not a problem.
Ridiculous. It was like
We could have more bandwidth than you could use in a lifetime almost. So they talked about how they said they have 128 strands. There's a certain number of colors, and there's 100 gigabytes per color, and it was like 10 to 20 colors.
So we asked the same question of them as far as bandwidth and capability, and they went through the math with us, and the numbers were just, as far as how much it could conduct.
And as I talked to Utopia, they were on the same page on bandwidth. I don't think bandwidth. Anyway, it's a good question because I had the same question. So
To Brent's question, the limit right where we sit right now, what's really going to limit fiber speeds is the hardware you have in your house. It's the modem you have. So if you wireless, that's speed's limited. If you're hardwired, it's going to be faster and you can take advantage of it. But upgrading the modem at some point in time is going to allow you to take advantage of gigabit speeds if that's what you want and pay for. That's the other thing that, all this technology, you got a leak here and a leak there, and after a while, some of it catches up. We've got our designated engineer, she's queued up for her comments. So, but, and I've got some things I'll say once everybody's done, but, and Rob has some comments he wants to make, so we'll ask him to weigh in as well before we get to the end. Janelle, you wanted to?
I just wanted to make the point, I mean, I also like the idea of fiber, but if Providence City had done a 20-year bond on DSL 20 years ago, why would we want to own that? There's no way to predict the evolution of technology. And to put a 20-year bond out on the citizens for fiber sounds great now, but 20 years from now, is it going to be dinosaurs? Like, is it worth taking a bond out on something like that?
And I just want to clarify my remarks. When I said I was spent on talking about this, it's because the previous council we've listened and we learned, and we had directed, and I thought we were moving forward with actually, what is it called when you go out to bid or you post what you're doing?
Request for proposal.
We
request for.
Had we not?
No, we did
We
that.
did that. So
We received that.
when I say this, and more options are great, but when I say this is, I thought, we were all unanimous in moving forward with Utopia. So that's why I said that. So please forgive me.
Rob, you have your particular concerns. I mean, I think I know what they are, but I can.
Well, I can,
You need a microphone.
the discussion you guys have already had has been spot on with a lot of details that I had, so I don't really have that much to say, actually. I've got concerns with all of them, obviously, and I guess to put it in a simple phrase, my personal opinion is that it's totally awesome, but totally unnecessary. So, I personally, that's how I could boil that down with all the different research and discussions that I've had with people. It's really boils right down to that. So that's all I really need to say.
I had something else that you brought up. You didn't mention, Rob. One of the things about Comcast, CenturyLink, and whoever else wants to compete and do business, when they come to Providence, they go to the businesses like Morris Pool by the roundabout there. His business had, I don't know, CenturyLink or Comcast. What drives Rob nuts is he has no idea what they're doing or where they're pulling the conduit. And how many companies are we going to have pull conduit through this city? Whereas if the city owned the conduit, it's similar to a sewer line or a water line. The conduit is the pipe, it's not the actual cable itself. Once we own it and we can manage where it goes as the fiber conduit is pulled through, laid down through the city, Comcast, CenturyLink could all get connected to our cable that's pulled through that conduit that we control and we know where it goes. And they can certainly compete with a dozen other internet service providers out there that Utopia offers. So the competition will be there. So there's really two things to this. One is the utility part of it, and that's the conduit and the cable. And the other is the internet service provider, which is the connection to whatever programming you want, whatever phone service you want. And I mean, that's how to look at this whole thing from Rob's standpoint. Is it absolutely drives him nuts when he sees these people boring through a park strip. He has no idea where they're going with that. Ryan had the GIS map up there. If we have our own system, the GIS map is going to reflect exactly where that conduit went, and we can control the crew that does it. Strata has their own crew and equipment that does this. Utopia does not. Utopia contracts out for most of this. Whether it's Strata or Utopia, someone other than city staff would be monitoring the network and going out and doing the repairs. It doesn't mean sometime out in the future we don't have someone on our city staff that go out and do some repairs. We don't have an issue with bandwidth. As far as speed is concerned, there's nothing faster than the speed of light. So we've asked the question about obsolescence, and we get the same answer from the Utopia people and from Strata. So we can have CenturyLink and Comcast come in, but we've also heard that both of these companies are considering offloading their residential business because that's not where the money is. I mean, they're bigger companies and they've got a lot of bandwidth in terms of resources, and who do they really want to hook up with? The businesses, because that's where the money is. The residential part, it doesn't. It's a long payout for them, and they're considering moving on. So, I mean, from our standpoint, we can say one of the options is do nothing, and then Rob battles with them and pulling conduit through parts of the city where the retail and business operations are. But when does the residential part ever get served? I don't know. We might be 20 years down the road. One of the things from our standpoint is it's going to attract businesses that really need high-speed internet. And when it comes to technology, it's changing every day. The demands are for faster speeds, more bandwidth. It's going to attract business to our city. You wouldn't believe how many home businesses we have in the city. It's just amazing how many business licenses there are. And I bet quite a few of those really could benefit from higher speed. And I also think home values improve too if we as a city were built out. So you can look at it from different models. One thing I might say about Lighthub, American Fork does not have a fiber network. One small part of the city, they've bought the network. They have put together a model. They have created an interlocal agency. There's no one in that interlocal agency right now other than American Fork, and it's just an idea on paper right now. But they have asked Kaysville and other cities and our city if we wanted to join them, and so we talked to them as well, and we're just looking at different options. And to Josh's point, I made the same point about, where's our break-even point? What's our obligation going to be when it comes to bond issues? And, what is the, when you run a financial model, what is the impact and what's the sensitivity for Comcast or CenturyLink coming in and cutting prices? I think where the competition is going to be is on the service side, the programming side, not on the cable side. Yes, sir, Ralph.
Ralph Daniels, Providence. I appreciate the comments and the questions that have been raised here, and I think fiber optics is good. My concern is, and I hope that each of you will have in black and white the figures before you make a decision, because as you know, with Utopia, there's a certain percentage you have to have, and if you don't reach that, then we, the taxpayers, have to foot the bill, and I don't want to spend any money that I don't have. So please, make sure you've done your research, you got the facts and the figures before you make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else?
I would be inclined to move forward or gather more information on the Utopia or the Strata. I'd like to see us being a forward-thinking city and providing the service. I'm with Brent in the fact that, I feel like we have our hands full running the things that we are trying to run right now, and I would be inclined to think it would be better to go with Utopia, let them take care of it. That's my 2 cents. But I don't know that doing nothing it's the easy thing to do right now. But.
Scarlett?
I think one of the things that's important to remember, it kind of goes along with what Josh was saying, but when it comes to essential services and priorities, we're looking at a new reservoir. We need to do something about sewer to attract businesses to the southwest part of the city. We may need to do something with emergency services. There are certain things the cities have to do, and I think when you start looking, one thing is not to forget the priorities that we are already involved in, We are also going to be looking at doing rate studies throughout the next year on all of the services we're currently offering. So I just think it's important to keep in mind when we start to broaden the buffet too large, how that priority level is going to shake out. And I would think everybody would agree that the essential services of water and sewer and the life safety type services are going to have to take top priority. So if you're looking at how much we're taking out of people's pockets, that may be something you want to consider before we ask for another hole out of their pocket.
Ryan, any on that?
I think the questions are great. I'd like to, if I'd be so bold, that see if I could have the questions on these Q&A just asked. Take a vote. See, because I think if we can know which way you want to go, we can achieve. We can do a lot of different things. A lot of talk. I think there's great things. We haven't gone into all the numbers with either one. I don't know that we know a full build out for either side. I have gotten rough numbers and could do some. But if you're not interested in the model, it's not a point of going down the rabbit hole too far. Let's fill in the holes that we're not going to go down. And if we want to, then we'll get the numbers. We say, you know what, we like the idea of owning our infrastructure. Even if we don't manage or run the system, we just want to own it. That's an option. I just want to know, give me some direction. If you take a vote on those four, I think we'd know which way we're headed. That's my thought.
There are more than 4 questions on mine. Which one?
Four questions,
Four options.
right there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Four in the back. I apologize.
So if I might, I've been thinking about this a lot since I was assigned to fiber, which was not an assignment I sought out. But I do feel like, Christina, like I would like to be a forward-thinking city. And I feel like fiber is inevitable at some point in the future. So why not be an earlier adapter? We're not early adapters. This is not new technology, but for Cache Valley, it's, just getting here, just getting going. So I feel like it's going to come to Cache Valley. So why not move forward? I like the idea of since we're going to have the downside either way, I like the idea of having the upside so that we can pay it off potentially faster, because it probably will at some point become obsolete. But the option of paying down the loan faster, I think is a smart move. Today we're not voting on a bond. We're not signing any papers. We're just deciding, are we going to move forward with this or not?
So I'm leaning no, and it's largely because of what Councilman Seeley said. I agree with Mayor Drew that nothing will agree faster than fiber optic. It's certainly not within my lifetime. So I get that, but that's not really the issue in my mind. I see disruptive technologies that are right there that could come in here and change our business model, and I'm not comfortable giving the bill. Give you an example. We sent my mother-in-law down on a mission last month down to Salt Lake. We tried for 3 weeks to get internet installed at her house, and no-show appointments. You guys have all been through this. And finally, she was like, should I just use the internet on my phone? I said, I think it'll be too expensive. And we have her on our phone plan. And she has more than enough data on her wireless plan to sit there and watch movies all day long. It doesn't cost her anything. Comcast in our neighborhoods, Comcast and CenturyLink, it's been the last mile delivery that's been so expensive for them, which is why they don't want to come here. It costs them a lot. And with wireless going that way, that infrastructure they can turn on and off. It's not on the ground. They don't own it. So I think we're a few years out. I don't love being bleeding edge for Cache Valley on this one. And I've waffled back and forth in this, but fiber is not in Cache Valley, and I don't want to be on the bleeding edge. So I think we'll see a lot of competition, disruptive technology, and wireless. I'm just leaning towards not proceeding. So.
If I can understand what the no was. Is the no was to go forward on our own fiber, either Utopia or that, to maintain at the status quo.
I'd rather not see us bond for something like this as much as I'd love to see fiber optic. And I know we're not making a vote here, I'm just telling you kind of where I'm sitting. I don't want you to have to run all the numbers if that's the case.
Yeah, no, I was looking on number 4 on the back, what we decide, the questions, the ones.
I think number 4 is a great question. It says, should we operate on a leap of faith? Absolutely not. We should run the numbers every single time.
It'd be helpful for me just to have those votes, to go down and say, absolutely, those are on.
Oh,
If everybody's in that same one.
We're talking
Are
about
we voting
that.
on options or are we voting on
Hold on,
questions?
hold
Oh,
on.
I was looking at options on the questions on the back, I'm
I
sorry.
think we're talking about the front, aren't we?
Can we step back?
Yep.
I think one option that might be helpful is to say which ones are we going to eliminate, rather than saying vote on 1, 2, 3, and 4 or something like that. But I do want to explore what Josh is talking about. And when we got this draft, I added number 4, which says, do we believe the 30%? I keep hearing this thrown around by the Utopia and other people on it. Where's that number come from? I have no idea. I mean, maybe the right number is 50%, maybe it's 20%. I have no idea. And my point to Ryan was there are certainly firms out there that do take these, put everything in a model, make certain assumptions. They've got variables they can change. I think CRSA can do that for us. She's smiling. And I'd like to have a model we can play with. And so we can see what the payout is on paying down the debt. Is it 30 years? Is it 20 years? What are all those variables? Change them around and see what that we run up against. One thing about Providence is we have the highest median household income of any city in Cache Valley. So who's going to lean towards higher speed internet? It's going to be households with higher income. So if it's not going to happen in Providence, it's probably not going to happen anywhere. There is fiber to this valley. And who does the fiber go to? The big businesses that pay $2,500 a month to the fiber company. And so the connections are here. So the connections are here to this valley. The conduit has been laid going down Highway 30, going out towards Tremont, and there is conduit coming through Sardine. I've seen them laying it, and one of the purposes of that is so the businesses here in the valley have redundancy. So if one route goes down, and the other route works. So I'd like to explore that. I mean, I'd like someone to crunch the numbers for us. I don't think we have the horsepower here in our staff to build a model like that, but I think we can start out. I have no idea what it would cost, but I think it's well worth spending the money. I think I hear from the people here on this council that doing nothing is probably not an option, and we can eliminate one of them here.
But didn't Josh
Yeah,
just say
it is
he
for
prefers
Josh.
to do nothing?
It is for Josh.
I don't mind, I prefer the do nothing route, but if you ran the numbers and you can show that the internal rate of return on this is significantly better than what we get on spending on another service in the city, then I'd be open to it, but it's gotta be,
So
it can't just be,
So
we
you're
just have
in-
a 30%
It
take
has to
rate.
make sense.
you're in favor of bringing somebody to the table who can put things together in a model and say,
Because I think it solves the business side of the
Right.
equation. I'm
So-
with you on the service side, we got two
right.
things I'm considering.
So how do we
So
figure
on
out
this,
that?
on this, there's two income streams. The service side, we make money, and the utility side, we make money as well. So there's all these variables and all these things. that have
Yeah,
to
when I
go
say
in.
service, I mean services that we want to be involved with and
Provide.
provide to the city.
I do know that Utopia made a presentation to all of the mayors in Cache Valley. I wasn't there. I had already heard Roger Timmerman's pitch, and every mayor indicated that their city was interested, except Logan City, and I think I said this before. Logan Mayor has heard all the horror stories about the Utopia model. At the end of the day, Utopia wants to come to Providence or any other city so they can generate a positive income stream so they can pay down the debt from 10, 15 years ago. And that's what's on their radar, is getting that paid down. But Utopia model, there's no upside for us. We also don't own the fiber.
So you're saying we need to have someone do more of an analysis,
It's
not our staff.
I don't get to vote.
So we need
All
to
you folks get to
contract with
vote.
someone to do an analysis, correct?
That's, I think I hear Josh said
That's the
he'd be
idea.
favorable of,
But we need to find out how much that analysis will cost.
so, council, anybody else interested in having someone?
The question I have is, does the council have any interest in owning fiber? Because if they don't, that's a whole different discussion.
Right. So is it let CenturyLink and Comcast eventually come in and build out the residential part of our city? Or do we want to do something different?
For me, I'm interested in owning fiber with the potential of paying down the loan more quickly. So for me, that's my vote. I would like to run the
Very
numbers
helpful for me to move to the next step.
to see if Strata could make the numbers work for us to pay it down in a quicker way than we would be able to with Utopia. That's my vote.
That is a
Is that
very
what you're asking?
That is a very detailed vote, and I can make that happen if that's the vote of the group. But if the vote of the group is to leave it alone, then I'm willing to do that as well.
So,
I like Carrie's idea. I think that's
Was
a
that a
good
motion?
idea. Oh.
so
Yeah, is what I'm
this
saying.
is
Make
not-
a motion on a
this-
specific vote, and
this
then
is
we can
just a
vote
dis-
on a motion.
this is just a discussion item, so we don't have motions, but we can call it a motion to,
Direction.
Consensus.
a consensus, whatever we want.
Sure, you can take a vote.
Councilwoman Kirk has a motion. Do we have a second on that motion? I think I heard it.
I move that
Okay,
we vote on moving forward with crunching numbers to see if the Strata option would indeed make it viable for us to pay off fiber more quickly.
okay, so we have a motion to engage
I'll second that.
in crunching numbers, probably likely hiring an outside firm. I don't.
Strata might be able to help us with that.
This Strata certainly probably know people, an outside third party who could do it for us. They can give us some suggestions.
I have some suggestions too.
Let me go through.
For feasibility study.
Corey, I'll have you come up and just give me 1 minute. So that's what's on the table right now. Before we make a decision one way or the other, let's just, from a financial standpoint, where does it put us? Where is the break-even point? If we see competition and pricing, how does it affect our model? What is that break-even point? Is it 20, 25, 30, 40, whatever? I think the council would feel, I think what I'm hearing, especially from Josh, is I would feel comfortable if, finish my sentence.
I'm not capable of doing that. I don't know.
Okay.
I would be fine moving forward with a more thorough study, and I think we heard from one citizen that just want to make sure that we understand the numbers well before we make a decision.
All right. Council members, any other? Yes, sir.
Does your motion include the costs of what it would be involved with our city to be able to service that?
Absolutely.
Okay, you would have.
We have to
include
know what the service
that.
cost
So it's
would
a
be.
whole broad spectrum of
And
what
with
it was.
Strata, my understanding is that we would contract with them to service it for as long as we wanted them to service. And we could phase into servicing it if we decided to do that in the future. But the numbers would have to include the servicing costs.
So there would be breakdown as to the cost of Strata versus profits as Strata moved out of the picture, the
Right.
increase of profits and so forth. That's what it has to show.
It does have to show
So
that.
what it would probably show is option 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 options or whatever, 10 scenarios, and say, if we operated this way and made this particular choice, here's the result. So, I mean, that's what a financial
Analysis.
study would give us. We could come up with some options and say, have you considered that? And they'd say, would you like us to? We'll include that when we build our models. So all of the concerns that council members bring up, city staff and anybody else brings up, we can ask them to make sure they address.
if we feel like we got the budget for the hire an outside, independent outfit, I'm fine with that.
Ryan, could you advise us, when you go out and get that as to what the estimate of that cost might be, just so we're not on the, if you got someone running Monte Carlo analysis and, and we're 50 grand into
I'm
this.
pretty conservative, I'm not gonna go down that direction.
Okay, so
I can guarantee you, I'm gonna be really conservative.
maybe
on it.
just let us know via email so we've got an idea and make sure if someone has an objection, it might have to come back up for discussion.
Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Get more
Do we say
information.
ayes?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Hearing no nays, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Ryan, are you clear on where?
I am
Council-
clear on where I'm
where
going.
we want you to go?
At least I know that the option of fiber ownership of the infrastructure is at least a viable option. And if I'm not wasting the time of either one of those going down that rabbit hole. So that is very helpful for me.
But I do want to hear from Corey, because he had some insights he wanted to add to the discussion. Corey, you want to come up? Grab the microphone if you wouldn't mind.
That's not, I was just saying for the feasibility study.
Okay, would you introduce yourself? For the-
Corey Tweed, Novo City Recorder. For the feasibility study, we're looking at some options now and have some sources you can go to if you want, people that just do fiber feasibility studies. For us, the cost for just the financial part that you're looking at is under 10,000. So I think it be a little bit higher based on your population.
10,000 for Melvin?
Under 10,000
We get a number that was closer to 5 for Providence.
for just the feasibility, for just the
Oh,
financial.
feasibility, I thought you were talking about build out.
Oh no, just the financial feasibility study.
Under 10.
Would you mind sending me those contacts?
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I would caution against using, what's the name of the company again? Just because it's very, I think you get a very biased feasibility study if you go just to them.
Strata.
With Strata.
No, we
Yeah.
need to go to a third party. We
Yeah,
would not ask Strata.
That's what, we're definitely going to a third party for that. And then with Strata, how, do they have fiber in Cache Valley right now? Because that's the one.
No.
So at this point, the fiber in, they would look to put it in. They have credits with UDOT and lots of different places, and so they could transfer those credits to move it into that conduit fairly easily. And they would lay that fiber in as they were building, so they could do a dual, either the connection in. But if that didn't happen, they also have joint agreements with several others that they could lease on top of.
Okay. So we're obviously the do nothing. We would absolutely do the do nothing option in Millville right now with all we have going on. But because we're ripping up our roads anyway,
We have a
we
lot
just want to kick a fiber line in there while we're at it.
But let me guess, as long as you're tearing up your city streets and everything else, laying conduit would be a good option since the dish is already there.
Yeah, and at least conduit.
Fairly inexpensive.
It's less expensive
A
still.
lot less.
Yeah, still expensive. Yeah. So to your point about owning it and having the resources to do that, where that would make more sense if more of the cities, neighboring cities, are going to share that maintenance. That's where that would make sense in our mind. And yeah, I think you guys covered it quite well.
One of the things we talked about when Strata was out here is a build out in phases. So, for example, we might say, let's do the commercial area. Let's do parts of the city we think are early adopters.
Connect all the council members' homes
We'll
first.
make sure Grandview is we run our truck line down Grandview. So where we think the higher adoption rate's gonna go, I mean, that's maybe where we go first or second, so.
Yeah.
Before we do the rest of the city.
And the comment about maybe not needing fiber, you're right, it's not needed, but the amount of bandwidth that's being used now versus even last year. So I work at Icon during the day, and every treadmill now is a tablet with video, high definition video shot through the internet. You can't buy a treadmill that's not connected to the internet, and that's how everything's going. So having fast internet is going to be more and more of a desire.
As far as technology, you just hit on part of it. One of the new technologies coming is 5G. and what 5G means. Each of those towers is gigabit fiber speed.
Yeah.
So without fiber in a given city, 5G is just not going to be.
Yeah, 5G is not an option without
Not an
fiber.
option without fiber.
Right. Yeah. And then just one more comment that may or may not be helpful. As far as the uptake rate, so I asked Utopia, we met with them yesterday as well, if any of their member cities have had a hard time hitting their threshold of 30 to 40%, and none of them have had to pay anything out of pocket yet. So your businesses help bring that down, so your threshold is even lower. But and then I asked the exact same question you did. What if in 20 years we have balloons flying around? We don't need. We're tied in for 25 years with Utopia, and that's our big concern with them, with that option. So.
Thanks, Corey.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. So we covered all the bases that we want to cover.
Yep.
Okay,
That's
good. Let's move on. Ryan's knows what he needs to do, and I'm sure you'll keep us in the loop. Item number 2, discussion item only. Providence City Council will discuss the 2020 meeting schedule. In everybody's packet, there's a copy of the meeting schedule. And I think Scarlett probably put out a public notice early in the year notifying the public of what our council and planning and the other meeting schedules out. So it's out there. But I think we had an interest in making some modifications. So on that note, this is a discussion item. Let's open it up for any council member who wants to weigh in on it. First of all, who brought it up in the first
Me.
place?
Me.
All right.
I think we can have one meeting a month after talking with Ryan. And if we need to, we can add a second meeting, and that'll happen.
Okay.
But until then, I
So
feel like we can be more efficient, more effective on the staff level. So, as long as we're prepared when we come and get everything we need in advance, we can do this thing.
I like having the meeting on the first Wednesday on an as needed basis and support shooting for a once a month meeting unless there's something urgent. Also, April 1st is over spring break, and most likely I will be absent if there's a meeting that day.
I will also be absent. If we go to one meeting a month, are we going to get a book every time we have a meeting?
well, personnel policy alone was half the book. Yeah.
And then the
The
general
general
plan.
plan was most of the rest.
And the general
So
plan, yeah.
take those two
probably
big chunks
not
out and
as
probably
long.
not.
So if it's going to be printed, I'm wondering if we could get it printed and put in our box so that we could study it and write notes on a printed copy. Otherwise, I don't see a lot of value in the printed copy. Like I've gone through page by page and made notes on the digital copy. And now my printed copy only becomes reference for here, but I've got to open up my computer every time I need to look at my digital notes.
So you'd like us to print a hard copy so you have it?
Only if it's in advance. If not, I don't need a hard copy at the meeting. I would like a hard copy of the agenda
Would you
because I like
prefer,
check marks.
would you prefer digital? Because that's where I think we'd like to go eventually, is to move it to digital so it's all
I
there.
love being careful with resources. So I would prefer digital.
That's what we'd like to make to eventually get to. We've had a few different places we've looked. We're delving into that to try to find a way. I've had other ones that have been digital. We didn't do any at the hospital where I was on the board. It was all electronic, and we had it in advance, so we could go through the agenda item linked. It was great that way, but it was on a whole different level. So we could,
Even the way it is now, it's. I mean, I did all of my reading on a soft copy because I wasn't going to print this at home, and so for me, unless I'm getting, I love paper if I have it in advance, but it's not that useful to me at this point.
I think let's do digital, and if we want it at the city to make us a hard copy, we can request it, we can swing in and grab it early.
So I have a question. I'm the dummy on the block because I get it in the PDF form and I can print it from that. If I try and convert it so that I can do something with it, it skips, leaves spaces, and is not correct. Well, doesn't have
Formatted.
continuity. And so how do you edit it, or how do you write things on it if you don't convert it?
Yeah, it's not easy. I just made a running list of my edits and comments.
I agree with this, but we're supposed to be talking about meeting schedule just to stay on topic here. I agree with that. I'm just wondering if that could be taken offline.
Yeah. We'll work on that. We'll work on that. Leave it to us. We'll come back. We understand it's digital.
So then I feel like this conversation can be quick if we can just weigh in on the other councilmen. You've heard from me and Carrie.
I'm fine for one.
I am too. That's fine.
So far, we have a majority.
I'd be willing to do it. I was going to propose a third option because I like third doors, but I was going to say let's try to do it twice a month just because I thought we could keep up with the services for the residents better, but limited to 2 hours a time, versus the
We're almost there.
We're almost there. I know.
But that doesn't.
I'm fine. Even if this is a consensus of the group, I'm happy to go once a month.
One of the reasons too to do it once a month and have longer meetings if needed is because the preparation that staff has, and when staff has 2 meetings a month, it's noticing the meetings. It creates a lot more for them. So I think for efficiency,
I absolutely agree with that. My only thought on the 2 month at 2 hours would be I see a lot of residents that come here, and they're waiting for legislative business item number 1, and they're here for 3 or 4 hours before we get to it. And I would like them to be able to participate a little bit more, but we tend to exhaust them far before we exhaust ourselves. So.
Well, and that's just about running an effective meeting, and sometimes I think we might need to put time limits on some of these discussion items.
And I favor that.
So if we put a time limit on it, we also might find ourselves in a position where we've said we're going to spend 20 minutes on it. We haven't finished it, so we're going to continue it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we have to do it. So, Scarlett needs to weigh in. Somebody mentioned the imposition on the staff as far as preparation. I'm sure you have your opinion, Scarlett.
Well, they're preparing for 1 meeting a month is easier than preparing for 2 meetings a month. However, if the packets are so large that you really don't study them out like you need to, then I'd rather prepare for 2 meetings a month. I mean, I'm kind of I totally understand the 1 meeting, and don't get me wrong, I think that's the better thing for staff. What I would be, where I think we would go amiss, is if for whatever reason you don't feel like you're prepared to come to that 1 meeting, then I would feel badly about that.
Well,
So-
but wouldn't that be something too, where you could say we have too many items, we need to have 2 meetings this month?
Good.
I mean, and that's
Right.
up to Ryan and you.
So very good. Let me walk through a scenario for you. Say where you've been going before. You have at that point you have a planning and zoning meeting 1 week. You had a city council the next. You have a planning and zoning the next. You had a city council the next. When does staff ever take a vacation? They don't. It may be more effective for us as that way, but I will tell you that if you want your staff to not burn out, you will highly consider that as some options to say, what's your effectiveness at this point? How much of your packet did you see at just the announcement? I would say a vast majority of your packet came in pieces and meal throughout the month, and you saw a lot of it well before your packet came out. We are not the last minute. Most of your packet did not come in one spot at one time. You had your packet in pieces along throughout the month, and lots of time to be able to digest that and
to ask
questions and to have all of your questions addressed and reviewed prior to this meeting. And so you had lots of opportunity, I would say. I think that is more effective to have your research, to have time to digest different ones. But I do think a meeting a month, well organized, it can be, and I have seen it, be very, very effective in that we go through cycles. So one thing you want to be able to see after planning and zoning. So you want to follow them. As things build, the financials, you'll have financials that build into it, and they go in a monthly cycle. There's a lot of things, lots of organizations go in a monthly cycle. It is the natural course of things. So, you know.
I'm going to make this quick so we can get Cormac. I'm willing to go with 1 month because I'd really like to see you take a vacation once in a while, Scarlett and Ryan. So there we go.
And so with that being said, can we move on? Like,
Can
we be done with this section?
So, as long as you're okay with getting the things as we get them out.
Yep.
Because we have had a lot of
That'd be
time.
wonderful.
So,
All right.
Then we can review them, you bet.
let me step back to 10,000 feet. I'm looking at the agenda we all have in front of us. We've covered 2 items.
Yeah.
We have 3 and 4, and then we have legislative items, number 1, 2. Some of this is pretty complex stuff, code amendment, and we have a young lady in our audience who's last. I'd like to see her be able to address the council and move on, and I know when it's brought up, let's limit it to 2 hours. We're coming up on 2 hours right now. So,
Let's get better at being efficient.
Which means right now, let's just move
Ryan
on.
was making a point, and being the biggest part of being efficient is having this review well in advance and have all your questions of whether it's our city attorney, our city engineer, our city manager, anybody on our city staff answered in advance. It makes all of this go a lot faster. And it also helps if you talk to other council members and said, hey, what do you think about going to one council meeting? So a lot of that discussion's been covered, but and I think some of the reason why it's as long as it is today is because we only had one council meeting this month. We only had one council meeting in January. Sometimes, and now we've got another individual adding to our load here, and that's Ryan, and I don't think he's going to let up with all the hard work he's doing. He's going to bring things to the council and say, you know what, this is something we really need to take a look at, spend some time on. Today it's personnel policies, next month it's going to be something else. So, all those things are worth considering. I really don't want to I want to make sure we're thorough before we vote on something, but I also want to make sure that if we're not prepared, we say, let's move on, let's table it, let's have that for next month, or if it's important we get to it, let's have 2 council meetings next month. That's my 2 cents.
Whatever you'd like to do. At that point, the motion is appropriate with it, whether direction you go. If most of them go that way, most of them don't, however you want to go.
Well, I think you've heard from the council, so I make a motion that we have 1 meeting a month and move on.
I'll second.
I believe that we spend a lot of time, we could be right now on several items down the road. So we need to just be efficient, and we are prepared. I know every single one of us has prepared for this meeting and asked questions. We've all spoke with Ryan, so anyway, that's what I propose. We move on.
I'm seconding. Or you seconded.
I second it.
So,
Aye.
do we go to
Me too.
the first meeting on the schedule of the month, or do we go the
Third
second one?
Third Wednesday.
Third? All right. Anybody else
The
need to
first
weigh in?
is needed.
Okay.
Nope.
So we're gonna go to the 3rd Wednesday only, unless the council says,
Unless
hey,
we
we've
need
got a number of things we want to cover.
Unless the staff maybe tells us that we need more meetings.
We'll do that.
I don't know if we as a council can determine that. I think that would be more the staff feels like there's an overwhelming amount that we call for.
Well, they can
They need us to decide.
suggest it
make
to
some
us.
decisions.
Right.
Ultimately, it's
Our
council says-
decision, but yes.
Item number 3.
Okay,
Take a vote.
so we're,
All in favor?
all right, we're done, right?
Yes.
Okay. Personnel policies.
No, we didn't do a vote.
You have to take a vote.
No, I thought we did.
I made a motion.
All in favor?
It
Got a
was
motion and a
seconded.
second.
Aye.
Nays? Unanimous, okay. Third Wednesday, one council meeting. Okay. Providence, can we go out of order? The council be okay with it?
Sure.
We have a representative here from CRSA. It's item number 4. It's, at the rate we're going, it'll be at 10 o'clock tonight. I think she doesn't live here in Cache Valley. Would you mind if we go to item number 4, resolution 004-2020, under legislative items, if the council's okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes? I have one yes?
General
Yes.
plan,
Yes.
yes, that'd be
Yes.
fine.
Well, I have one fine.
Yes, sorry.
So,
Sorry.
so, if you don't mind, we'll move on to legislative item number 4, and that has to do with the general plan discussion and approval, the resolution. So I'm just going to read this so we can move forward with the motion. Item number 4, resolution 004-2020, Providence City Council will consider for adoption a resolution adopting the general plan and associated key initiatives, objectives, and goals. It's a resolution, so I need a motion. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve item number 4, resolution 004-2020.
Motion from Councilwoman Eck. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilwoman Kirk. Further discussion. Can we invite our representative from CRSA, unless Brian would like to lead this off?
Well, this is just if you want.
They have all that in their
Okay.
packet, unless you want it up on the screen.
No.
Okay.
All
So
right.
it's, would you introduce yourself to the council? Last time you were here, it was a different council.
It was.
And if I don't mind, there was a momentous event. It was December 13th of 2016, when the council voted to approve your proposal to provide services for Providence City Consulting Services.
All right.
Can you just very briefly explain?
Yes,
what
I'll very,
your-
very briefly
your
explain.
role was?
So, my name is Tina Gilman. I'm from CRSA, and you're correct. I love Cache Valley, and I'm an Aggie, but I do have to drive back home to Salt Lake tonight. So, thank you for moving me forward. It's been a pleasure working with your city. I really enjoyed it, and your staff is fantastic. Scarlett and Rob, and most recently Ryan. They've really been amazing. You have a really fantastic staff. And so, I am just going to give you a quick overview of the general plan. I know you've had it in your package and you read it, and we've addressed some of your comments that you've had. So the general plan, we did start this process a few years ago, and we got input from the general public and also specifically from the city council and from staff and other business owners and stakeholders, and that's where the genesis of this plan came from. So everything in here is meant to be a reflection from what we heard from you, from all of you. And the plan is written in 2 parts. The first part is intended to be really readable, to be accessible, to whether someone has a lot of experience with general plans, or maybe this is the first general plan they've ever picked up. It's meant to be accessible to people. So moving into the plan, the first 5 or 6 pages provide a context both for what a general plan is, what it's intended to do, how the process came about, and also some background and history of Providence. So no matter if someone has lived here for 40 or 50 years, or if they just moved to the city and need to know a little bit about Providence, they have that background. So one of the most important parts, skipping ahead on page 3.1, is the Providence City vision. And again, this vision was crafted in collaboration with previous council and staff and input from the public meetings that we had. And the Providence City vision is to guide and manage growth in a way that preserves natural scenery while also providing more opportunities to live, work, shop, and recreate in Providence. So that's the big overall arching vision. Now from that vision, we developed 5 key initiatives. And so what that looked like was taking all the written comments that we had back to our office and sifting through them and looking for themes. And so these 5 key initiatives came out of all the comments that we received, and those are sense of place. Preserve the sense of place by identifying characteristics that define Providence as a unique place. Number 2, green infrastructure. Make decisions regarding stormwater and exterior water use guided by green infrastructure and low impact development best management practices. Number 3, fiscal responsibility. Consider life cycle costs in mind when making decisions for design standards such as road widths and new capital improvement projects. So that might be relative to your discussion tonight earlier. Number 4, a multimodal city. Ensure that transportation and recreation facilities accommodate a variety of transportation modes. Biking, walking, driving, for example, to provide people multimodal transportation options as a lifestyle and recreation choice. Number 5, economic development. Consider long-term economic development impacts when making land use, transportation, and other planning decisions. And number 6, life cycle housing and housing choices. Encourage housing options to meet the needs of residents of all ages, income level, and family size, regardless of their stage of life. So what these key initiatives are intended to do is give you, as a council, some guidance as you make decisions. Whether it's what you were talking about earlier tonight or the decisions that you have to make with the infrastructure needs that Scarlett talked about, you have these key initiatives to reference back to and say, okay, once we're on the ground meeting in city council every single month, are these, once we get down to the nitty-gritty decisions that you have to make, are they reflecting where you want to go as a city with these key initiatives, so that you can look back in 10 years and say, yes, we made decisions in accordance with what we as a Providence City Council and city residents decided was important to us, what we valued and where we wanted to go. The following pages in this part, chapter 3, show how these key initiatives correlate with the objectives outlined in part 2. So part 2 is a more traditional kind of general plan where it's meeting what is required to be in a general plan. So it's a lot more text heavy, a lot more detail that someone may or may not choose to read, but at least by reading this more friendly, graphically friendly, accessible part in the beginning of the document, someone can get an idea of how the different chapters in part 2 and the details of transportation and housing and land use, how they relate to those key initiatives. Now, objectives from one part, such as land use or transportation, they could meet more than one key initiative. So you might see some of those objectives repeated under the key initiatives. And that's why, because they can support more than one. So that's the bulk of what chapter 3 is showing how those objectives line up with the key initiatives. Then the remaining chapters, 4 through, I think we have lesson 4 through 10, those are all addressing a specific topic. And they're all formatted in the same way with the background of what we know, how does what we know help plan for the future, and then an overall goal and objective. Each chapter also includes a table, and in this table, the objectives and the strategies to achieve those objectives that have been marked as either a short-term or a long-term goal. Now that was something we took our best stab at based on the input that we got with staff. And again, this document is intended to be a living document. So if you get down into things a few years in the future and you find out, oh, maybe this project was a little bit bigger than we knew about, or maybe you realize that you have more resources than you planned and you can take something that was in the 5 to 15 year and shift it over, that's fine. This document is intended to be active, living document to guide your decisions as a council. Let's see, The document does, and I was told to keep this pretty short, so I'll keep it short.
We've read it,
And then
so-
you've read it, yeah. The document does end with the best practices, resources, and references. Those are included as guidance. Those are nationwide standards, and in there you can use those to pull out things that are relevant to Providence. So, that was a very quick overview, and I know you've all read it, but are there any other questions I can answer for you? Or
So I feel highly motivated to get this finished. I can't wait to start on some of the other plans, but I do not feel like it's ready. Starting with the fact that there's 5 key initiatives, but there's 6. And the 6th key initiative seems to have been an add-on.
yes,
And I am not comfortable with some of the things that are in the 6th key initiative, and I think that it's going to require some discussion, and maybe even after we've just said 1 meeting a month, a meeting to work on this plan. I feel like everything else on our agenda today we could go through really quickly, but I sent probably 20 or 30 edits, which you did. Thank you. Those are the little things, but there's some big objectives that I'm not comfortable with, and I think some of the people on the council won't be either. I'm also wondering about the maps, like on 2.5 and 3.4. It shows like open space that's now in development. Does that matter? I know it's a living document, but those maps are at least 2 years old because there's been a lot of things approved. So for example, I guess I'll get to it. Scarlett's shaking her head no, but the second map below Grandview is being developed, and it's showing it as preserved potential conservation zones.
Which section are you in? Sorry.
she's on page
4. 3.4 is the map that I'm looking at, but I found this on 2.5 as well. So the numbers are cut off on our hard copy.
Yeah, okay.
So it's just in my notes that I know which page it is. But it seems to me, based on how I read this map, that some of these places that are potential, and I don't know if that even matters, but there are objectives that I personally am not comfortable with. And then there's X's on the 15-year, the 5 to 15-year column that are things that we're supposed to look at every 1 to 5 years. And there's a bunch of those as well that I was concerned about.
And it depends on how you interpret those too, because sometimes something might be in the 5 to 15 year because it is something that will take 15 years to accomplish because it's something that you have to do every year.
But it says in the objective that it should be looked at least every 5 years, but the check mark is in the, I was looking at this with a friend, and on every page I could see an example of that. And so I think there's, as much as I just want to say, I am done, I'm not there.
Okay.
So would it make sense then to send it back to planning and zoning if there are concerns and questions? Ryan, what is the process for that if we're not going to approve it tonight?
There is also one that maybe we have a subcommittee that says, hey, take 2 councilmen, I'll sit down with you. Some of it I'm in new, as you are, as most of you are, and saying, look, mine wasn't to alter the intent of what had been there. So I was sitting on a fence as well to say, I don't want to alter what the content is from my position because I don't know where you're at. But if the council wants to say, hey, let's have a couple of us sit down, we can go through some of those. If there's some that have varying opinions, so that would represent the group in that small group, we could have that.
I'd love that idea.
We could do that in a small one and be able to weigh out, so that's an easy one, small little group, rather than a full council and everybody and all of that, to be able to boil it down and say, hey, who are the two strong ones on the council that would like to, maybe the three of us get together, boil that down, and come back with some recommendations.
Then do we recommend to the planning and zoning again, or?
If you think it needs to go back to planning and zoning, we can. The matter,
Oh, we don't need to though.
that's up to you guys. It'll take a lot of circle back unless you give them good feedback of what they want.
Right. And I'll obviously also for that we want to make this successful for you and have it something that will work. I would just keep in mind that these objectives didn't come out of, they weren't just representative of one or two people's opinion, that there was a process we went through. So I'm hesitant to dig into a rewrite because there was a whole public process that supported how these came to be.
When did number 6 get added or come about? Because the language at the top reads as it looks like it was added later. I'm just curious, was that part of the public process, number 6?
It was added later it was added near the end of the public involvement process, just as housing became a greater concern.
So the public saw that and had input in number 6?
Or did they come up with number 6?
The council.
Well, there was discussion. My very, very first meeting that I attended happened to be when I can't remember the particular name of the development that was getting approved, but right away from the beginning, housing has been
But maybe
a concern.
Maybe we change it instead of 6 to get rid of the word life cycle and just do housing and housing choices. That might.
There's the objectives though in number 6 that I'm uncomfortable with, like providing incentives for higher density housing. Like I think we can use existing incentives, but I don't think Providence needs to be providing incentives. Developers are incentivized.
So I don't see where there's one that says higher density.
I'm just going off of my memory.
So there's one such as providing
provide incentives for affordable housing.
Affordable housing. That doesn't necessarily mean high density.
No, it doesn't.
And the objectives are intended to be written in a broad enough way. What does supporting and utilize existing affordable housing resources or providing incentives for affordable housing? That's really broad. And you as a council get to decide, what does that look like for Providence? How can we as a council support affordable housing in a way that works for our community? Just recognizing that there is a need for affordable housing based on your demographics of having a young population.
Right.
So it's intended to be broad. You can decide how you're going to implement that.
Right, I'd be in favor of that. As a smaller setting or something, worship, this is my only recommendation being, I'm not going to take long. I think we ought to pick a date on the calendar where we want to try to have this done by and work back from there rather than just kind of kick it without
Or
a date.
even the next meeting.
Your next meeting,
Next month.
just so we're working towards something, and then
I think having a subcommittee, if that's what you want to do, she has very valid points. We want to be careful that we don't just say, oh, well, we're going to totally disregard what the feedback is. I think we've had some of that, and we might be able to get some more of that notes and things like that to be able to consider. But I would say, yeah, if we have a month, let's put something on the date. If the mayor decides who that might be, then the three of us will get together, we'll decide a date, and we'll have it prepared and ready for the next meeting.
I have one other request with that. Sorry, this hasn't been brought up or shared. I look back at all the city newsletters for over a year. I read all of them. It doesn't mention or reference it or anything. I would feel most comfortable. I know we put it out on the website and via social. At least before it's approved, that we mention the city newsletter and allow the citizens to go ahead and look at it and see it.
Does it have to be a public hearing before we approve it?
It went to the public hearing in the planning commission.
And that's
I'll have to look on the date.
That's one thing.
In fact, they had
We
two public
post a
hearings.
lot of stuff in the newsletter. Matt Mayor, my only request, we post, hey, the general plan's ready for your review. Here it is. I believe that's good practice to just
We
make
can do
sure.
that.
So if we write an article, I think would be important in the newsletter article to say, it's available, to Josh's point, available for review and comment, but also provide them some means to comment or some place to post their comments. something to that effect, so otherwise okay, great. Who do I talk to? Who do I contact? How do I submit my comments? And we need to have some specific instructions. Maybe we add a web page.
We have it on our webpage and on our social media. They could comment through that, and we could add an email address.
So when we do the March newsletter, we can put an article in there saying that we've got it posted out there. You're welcome to comment. We actively solicit your comments. Here's on our website, you go to this page, click on it, open it up.
I'd like to amend my motion to say that we form a subcommittee and review this that way and bring it back to the council for
Would you also like
further review.
to have it in the newsletter and ask the public to?
When it's ready and when we have it ready, but
Okay.
but I think right now, first things first, and so my original, I had,
So who made the
So-
second?
I made the second.
Are you seconding
So I'm
again?
I'm re-seconding the revised motion.
So you're seconding the revised motion?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have a new motion on the table, and that is to form a subcommittee.
Yep.
Okay, all right,
And then bring it back to council.
and then
Yep.
bring it back to
Now we'll
council.
vote.
Yep.
Okay, so is that
Well,
clear?
there's discussion on the motion.
Oh.
Sorry.
What's that?
I'm just waiting. There's a motion, but there's always discussion on the motion, so I'm just.
Right. Right, so that's where we're going, is further discussion. So
So what?
Councilman Speth weighed in, Councilwoman Seeley.
I
Any
think
comments
having,
on the motion?
No, I think that subcommittee is a great option, as long as we, choose people who have, a variety of views.
And that's all I was gonna say.
Okay,
I'm all for it,
Councilwoman
and
Cook? Okay.
I can send my feedback to whoever's on the committee. I've
Okay.
got it all typed
So-
up.
so how do we pick for the council? How do we pick the two council members to work with? Ryan?
That's your prerogative, Mayor. Would
Mayor,
you
I'd like to-
take volunteers. You could
Just
assign.
Councilwoman Eck has a lot of resources for information and has a broad picture of what's going on in the world of real estate and housing on a daily basis. I think she is a must-have on our,
I've also been in a lot of meetings in regards to this general plan.
so is that, are you saying you're okay with these?
I don't want to be on it, but I will.
Okay, I thought you were saying
I
that, so
will.
sorry.
Yes, I will.
She's got the insider scoop.
You mean she's biased? Okay. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go ahead and vote on the motion, and then let's pick council members who'd be on the subcommittee. All right, so we have a motion on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Nay? Okay, motion carries. It's unanimous. So what we need to do is, we don't have to do it tonight. We can pick two members to be on the committee. Councilwoman Eck asked that she not be considered, so that leaves.
No, I said I will do it.
Well, you will.
Yeah.
Oh,
I said I
excellent.
don't want to, but I will.
Okay. Oh,
And
all right.
I just was wondering, would anyone else volunteer?
I'm sorry, I
think we asked for a
misunderstood. We need at
volunteer.
least one other volunteer,
Yes,
but it can't be three people.
another volunteer then, anyone?
Okay.
Carrie?
Anyone else like to?
I would love to, but obviously I've got opinions.
It's okay.
Everybody has
all
their
right.
opinion.
But I've got my email. I've even got your name in it.
I thought I heard, I'd be happy to, but I thought I heard Janelle speak up there.
I'm happy to.
Councilman Speth, how about you?
You know, I'm not so sure that I'm up to speed enough that I could be able to help you much of that.
It'll be part of your job if you're on this subcommittee to get
It
up to
would
speed.
be up to speed, but I've got to have a long ways to go. I will serve where I'm needed to serve.
Well, you're certainly needed, but
I like.
we all serve on
I
a
like those
volunteer
two.
basis. So you-
I like those two. I think they represent different views, different.
Me and
things.
Janelle?
That's good. Well, I was gonna say Mr. Speth. I think that'd be good.
I like Mr. Speth too. I don't get to vote. So do we have two volunteers?
Sure.
I just threw you under the bus. I'm sorry about that.
So we'll find something for the
No,
other
but
council
Ryan
members.
can.
Okay, so we
Well,
have
then
a
we would just
subcommittee.
need your comments and emails.
I'm sending it now.
CC me on that as
What
well.
Princess I said already.
Okay, so we.
Well, I need to change one word. Some, not most.
So we picked our subcommittee, so now we can move on. Is that
Yeah, let's move on.
okay? Okay.
Okay.
Tina,
All
we
right,
appreciate all of your, I know it's been a long
Thank you.
journey.
And it's beautiful.
I think
Your graphics are beautiful, your formatting.
Okay.
We'll get
I
it
just
there.
had one
Thank you.
question about
Yes.
how this worked,
Mhm.
since the Initiative 6 was brought up.
Yes.
I know that transportation and housing are specific requirements by the state to be in your general plan. And so I feel like maybe is that how Initiative 6 got on there? Because all of these other things don't tie in specifically in a direct way to housing, and that's required by the state. And
So-
is that
The second portion, chapters 4 through 10, those
are specific required by law?
right.
Uh-huh.
That's the section where yes.
I was just trying to
Yes, that's why we
understand
split it.
how it, as it weaves together.
Right, that's intended how it weaves together. If somebody wants to do a deep dive into the second section of what's required by the state, they can, but we recognize that that's not always very approachable by the average person, so we try to make it more friendly. Okay,
Council, anything else?
all right,
Thank you, Tina.
Thank
I have
you.
one last question.
yes,
A little bit off subject.
okay.
We were talking earlier about fiber. Is that something your firm would tackle as a third party
We can look into
number
it.
cruncher?
However, if you have resources for companies or consultants who specifically do that
We
analysis,
have no idea. We're starting from
oh, I
scratch.
thought the other gentleman that was here said he had some numbers
We
of
have some
firms who
contacts,
just.
yeah.
I just thought I'd check with you because you
Yeah.
may be one of his resources. I don't know. Your
I-
firm.
I mean, we can certainly talk about it, but if he has contacts that just do that I would look into that.
I considering that fiber in this state of Utah is not very made much in terms of inroads of penetration other than big business. I don't think there's anybody unless we go outside the state to find
Good
consultants.
point,
So
probably not. Well,
would you
I'll get
mind,
more information
do
and
you
get
mind
back
when
to
you go
you.
back home
Sure.
tomorrow morning and ask some
Yeah.
of your principals
Yes, I will.
and get back to Ryan?
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tina.
Okay, all right.
Have a safe
Thank
trip
you.
home.
Thank you.
Okay, council, 10 after 8.
We got this.
That wasn't too bad. It could have been far worse.
I think those ones help that if we have a long discussion, let's break it down and come back and so that we're well prepared for the discussions we come.
So, but I think the suggestion to have a subcommittee, I think is a solution to shorter meetings
I agree.
on some of these issues. We're gonna tackle another one. It's the next one and it's half of your packet here. I mean, rather than. Okay, let's go back to administrative business, item number 3. Unless the council wants to move in a different order, let me know. Resolution 005-2020 Personnel Policies, Providence City Council will consider for adoption a resolution adopting revisions to the Providence City Council personnel policies. Ryan, this is your baby.
I would say keep in mind that we're looking at a 90% document, not 100%. So because we have a mountain to swallow, we want to achieve a vast portion of it, but it's we're not fully finished with every little piece and everything. So what I would ask is saying, we've added the state auditors recommended. So the last full section was fully recommended best practice from the state auditor's office. Some of the other ones we were just simply missing and had some gaps. We have a few other little modifications to the current policy. One would be if there is, on PTO time, we've added a third option. We had a rollover into the next year. We had into a short-term disability bank program, and this would open up the option to roll into a retirement. So it gives 3 options rather than 2. And anytime you can add that that helps. So other than that, there is, most of it follows best practice. I understand that little things, may have a wording here or there difference, and that those are totally okay to be able to have. But the issue is you should have been able to have it, research it. I've tried to meet with anybody that had concerns or discussion on it that contacted me, and that's what I would ask, is saying, if you believe this can be 90%, that I would ask and recommend to adopt, and then let me take the next 6 months to fine tune a few little pieces here and there and come back. But I want to make sure that we have adopted the policies that the state auditor's office is going to require us to have anyway. So we can either choose to be ahead of that game or behind it. And I'd really like to be ahead of it. So if there's particular questions, I'm happy to delve into any of the particular policies. So.
Okay, that being said, we need a motion on this before we delve into council discussion. Do I have a motion to, on item number 3?
I will make a motion to that effect that we adopt this resolution.
Okay, motion from Councilman Speth. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Councilwoman Janelle. Councilwoman Seeley. Council discussion, questions of Ryan.
That is a ton of work. Way to go, Ryan.
I know, right?
Wow.
So I get emails from Ryan a little bit after 6 a.m. sometimes.
Yeah,
I
and
don't know if he's at
emailing
home
at
or
night
if he's
too.
here already or where. Yeah, he goes home and say, oh, I missed one. 8:30 at night. Ryan, go home. I already am home. Yes, sir.
I have met with Ryan on the concerns that I have. We've discussed them. I don't think that I have any further concerns because we have discussed the issues that I had.
I'd just say, Ryan, I did not get through all this till today. It was more than I bargained for. I read every word. I've got 3 or 4 things, but I think you can wait 6 months and I view them as fine-tuning things. So I'll give them to you. And,
send it to me, that we can fine tune, and we can move forward with a few other things. Yeah.
Carrie,
I'm ready.
you're ready. Janelle?
I'm ready also.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion on the, okay,
There's a
start us.
typo on the actual resolution.
Okay,
You're actually passing it on the 19th day of February, not January. So I will
Oh, is
make
it?
sure,
are you talking about the
Oh, on the paper you're
resolution?
signing.
yeah, on the actual resolution.
Oh, okay.
this also has a typo. I did notice that in the resolution down before. I think it was copied over from the general plan. Am I remembering that right? It says, therefore be it. Am I looking at the right one?
Yep. Needs to
This is-
say the attached,
Yeah, there's a whole section that needs to be changed.
yeah,
I told you I read every word.
sorry.
We will update that resolution, so.
Ready to vote?
So do we need to amend the motion with those changes
We'll make sure they're
to the
correct.
resolution?
I don't think you.
So I'll just ask for a vote with the changes that were suggested. Okay. You ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Nay? Unanimous? Passes? Took a whole lot less time than we thought. Thank you. David. Okay. Item number 4, Resolution 006-2020, Recreation Philosophy and Cost Recovery Methodology. The Providence City Council will consider for adoption a resolution revising recreation philosophy and cost recovery methodology and associated fees. And I just want to make a note that Shaler, our recreation director, is in the audience, and council feel free on calling on him to answer whatever questions you might have. That's why he's here tonight. But I need a motion on the resolution from the council to adopt this resolution.
I move that we don't adopt this resolution.
Okay. We have a motion to not adopt the resolution. Second.
Second.
I have a second not to adopt the resolution.
Is that from Councilwoman Seeley?
Okay, we have a motion from Councilman Paulson not to adopt the resolution. Second from Councilwoman Seeley not to adopt the resolution. Okay, so now we have a motion on the table. Discussion. Scarlett, do you want to do?
You want to talk
I'll
about
be
it?
Something you wanted to say?
I'll be happy to talk about this. First of all, we do have a recreation methodology that is already in place. So we're only making changes to an existing document. The changes are actually to reflect current costs and expenses. And so if you want to change the philosophy of the document itself, I'm good with that too. We would just like to be able to get these costs in place so that other programs can implement them for their future seasons that are coming up. They can prepare their budgets and their registrations. If you're concerned with the costs, we can go over that. But we do have this recreation philosophy and cost recovery methodology that we do fall back on. So it is already it's in place. So if you've got problems with that methodology, then we need to talk about that so we can change that part. Because really the biggest part we're doing is changing the costs, the rates. Sorry.
And our design was to try to really evaluate the costs of those programs and to spread it as a user fee to that program. So we'd be curious what the concerns.
So if there's a discussion here, I started thinking of bringing it up, and maybe we can streamline this, because I would like to have a discussion on the methodology and the structure of the ordinance as it currently stands. If we don't want to have that here tonight, that's fine.
Subcommittee.
We can put on subcommittee or the next agenda, and I'd be willing to withdraw my motion and just approve the cost recovery. But I want to make sure there's a discussion on the methodology here, because I think there's some significant things that need to change here.
Okay. I think your input would be welcome, but tonight's probably not.
And that's fine. So I'll withdraw my.
Can we do it offline and have another council member and work with Ryan like we did the?
I would prefer to have it on council agenda. If there's another council member, I'd also like to have a discussion about this. I think it's important.
I think we can change it. Did you have any, because the change here is about rates, was that anybody else's concern?
I was happy to see that we're adjusting the rates. I've always felt like we've been subsidizing baseball, and this is going to alleviate some of that.
No, I am fine to adjust the rates too. I just felt like the document was incomplete. Like I thought it was starting, but it was not.
Now don't confuse this with a park master plan or a recreation master plan.
I'm not confusing it. I understand what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you only analyze the costs of 2 programs. I guess there's soccer and baseball, but there was nothing outlined for all of the other programs and what those costs are and how that is assessed and analyzed. It just felt like it was started, but not really complete to me.
Is that because we were only raising the costs of soccer and baseball?
That's because they're the only 2 outside parties that come in and use our fields that
we need to charge them for.
The other fees and costs are recovered through registration fees that we look at, uniform costs, insurance costs, those type of things. So we have program registration fees for our recreation program. But for the people that come in and utilize our fields as a third party, that's what we base this cost off of.
So they're just baseball and soccer do that.
So Mayor, if it's your prerogative, I'd be happy to work in a subcommittee if you'd have to do it, or if you'd have it on another agenda. But given that it's just costs, if we can have that discussion somewhere else, if you want to withdraw the motion, we can move on with this item, and then we can work on maybe some other things that I think need to be changed.
You mean table it until?
No, I don't think we need to table it. I think we can withdraw this, we improve the cost, because that's something your staff needs, and then we can form a subcommittee, or we can have it on a future agenda item.
So would you be on that subcommittee?
I would like to be.
Would you then redo your motion?
I'll redo my motion.
Thank you. Let's hear it.
All right,
Okay.
can we hear your redone motion?
Motion retracted.
And then your new motion. And the new motion is?
Oh, let someone else do it.
Oh, come on.
No, okay. I move that we approve item number 4, resolution 006-2020 recreation philosophy and cost recovery methodology with the caveat that we have a subcommittee organized to address other content issues in the resolution.
So your motion as it stands means we adopt this package.
With a caveat, I can append a
Okay.
caveat.
So you're saying let's adopt what's here, but let's move forward, not just leave it. Let's
That's
convene a
exactly
committee.
what my motion was.
Okay, as long as,
Yeah, we're understanding.
okay. do
I'll
I have a
second that.
Okay, so so the motion is to approve the resolution
The change.
that's in our packet here, but also revisit the methodology and the fees, with Josh being on a subcommittee and a second volunteer to be determined. So I have motion, can we vote on it or we need more discussion?
I'm ready.
Ready? Councilman Spath, are you ready?
I am.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. The motion is to approve the resolution with a subcommittee to be formed of 2 council members, work with city staff, and further make some refinements and come back with recommendations to the council. That's the motion on the table, if I stated it right. So let's say all in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Nay? Okay, I hear no nays, so it's unanimous. Thank you. So, one last question. I need another volunteer besides Josh.
Janelle, I'm happy to.
Janelle, okay. Josh and Janelle?
Volunteering everyone. She's on the next one.
I've been doing fiber.
Fiber's a lot.
And you're doing a great job.
You don't need to know
And I'm
about
on
the
the-
diet.
Tax committee or something.
I'm like
Okay,
an emergency disaster. I think that just happened with me.
we're making progress, right?
It's an
Okay with
emergency.
all that?
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll
good.
do it. We'll do it.
Excellent. Wow, got some done. All right, move on to legislative business items. Item number 1, ordinance number, this is an ordinance, 2020-001, impact fee enactment for wastewater treatment facilities. Providence City Council will consider adoption of ordinance adopting an impact fee facilities plan and an impact fee for wastewater treatment facilities. So I need a motion on that ordinance so we can jump into discussion.
I'll make a motion on ordinance number 2020-001, impact fee enactment for wastewater treatment facilities approval.
A motion
Second.
from Councilwoman Seeley, second from Councilwoman Kirk. Okay, we're ready for discussion. Last time we had Isa Hamoud here from Logan City Environmental. I think we got our questions answered. At the time when we discussed it, we said that the draft, the template we had would be revised considerably. Scarlett can speak to that. The red are the changes, the additions, and where it's struck through is that which is being removed. Scarlett, you're grabbing the mic.
I have to apologize. There were a couple of changes that we discussed and I did not get them included. And I got tied up with a funeral problem yesterday and it took more and I did not get this done for you. On page 1, where it says the report's adopted, when we put this together, we were focusing on just getting the wastewater treatment added. But it talks about the impact fee analysis July 1, 1997, and the analysis reflected therein for each of the impact fees in question. Right after July 1, right after, and the analysis reflected therein, right after 1997, we need to put the 2007 park impact fee and the 2000 wastewater treatment analysis, or treatment, and the analysis reflected therein for each of the impact fees in question, because we've actually updated it. The 2007 park impact fee and this 2019 wastewater treatment.
Scarlett, where are you?
On page,
Right there.
well, actually, it's page 2.
9-1A-1.
So the bottom of my page is cut off.
Oh, sorry.
So it's right at the very front, at the top.
Other
Very
side,
top. 9-1A-1.
Okay.
right here.
So I just need to reference the other 2 impact fees analyses that are included in this, that have been done since the report was done. And the 2019 wastewater treatment. And then the other correction is on, so it's in the red. It's on the first page that is entirely in red. And it's on the second line. It says, or excuse me, it is on the fourth line. Instead of saying the fee amount in the ordinance, we just need to say the wastewater impact fee shall be based per equivalent residential unit. And then the next line would read, the non-standard wastewater fee is calculated by determining the essential flow divided by 245 gallons per day multiplied by, and cross out that number and say the fee. And then a sentence would be added that says the fee shall be established by resolution of the city council. Because we don't like to put fees right in the ordinance, we prefer to keep the fees by resolution.
That is best practice to have your fees in your resolution instead of your ordinances. So those are things we can, at this point, if you're ready to adopt it, you could adopt it and split your motion that says that adds to the resolution. But we'll bring back the resolution next time to add that in. So that's what it is.
So we can adopt the resolution with those changes.
You can adopt the ordinance with those changes, yes.
And then on the March meeting, we'll have the resolution establishing the fee.
So we can adopt this with the changes. But we don't have to wait till the next council meeting to send out the revised copy. Do we? Okay. So if anybody still has an issue with it, we can bring it up again in the March council meeting. Okay. So yes, your motion amended would say, with the changes
amend my
discussed.
motion to approve ordinance 2020-001 with the corrections discussed.
Is that adequate?
Yeah, that's
We
fine.
good? Okay. Amended motion, who made the second? Councilwoman Burke?
Oh.
Are you okay with her amended motion?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have a.
Second.
Second. We have an amended motion on the table. Further discussion? Questions?
Approving this really isn't optional. I mean, our options are subsidize it or approve it.
That's true. We either pay the bill or pass
Yeah,
it on.
so,
We
or
either,
procrastinate it.
we either approve the fee,
Don't do
but
that.
the city's gonna get the bill anyway.
Yeah, well, I don't
From
think we
local
can
city.
procrastinate it either.
Okay, so
That means the city
it
gets
sounds
the
like we
bill.
don't have many options.
Out of our fees.
Well,
I'm ready to vote.
we have an option. We could build our own wastewater treatment facility. That's a longer discussion after.
That's a long discussion.
Yeah, we're not gonna build it.
That's bigger than fiber.
So, are we ready to vote?
Want to be on that committee, Chris?
No.
I'll be, I won't be here in 2 years.
Yes,
I
let's
I
vote.
didn't say that. Okay, we have a motion on the table. Are we ready for a vote or further
Yes.
questions or discussion? Ready for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay? Hearing no nays, motion passed.
How
unanimously.
efficient.
Thank you. Yeah. We're learning.
Uh-huh. We're learning fast, efficiently.
Christina is smiling.
She likes it.
I have no patience if you haven't figured that out yet.
That's why we're friends.
Some of us have known Councilwoman Act longer.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right, so, we're still in legislative business. We've covered all the administrative business. Item number 2, ordinance number 2020-002, code amendment. Cemetery, Providence City Council will consider for adoption an ordinance amending Providence City Code Title 7, Public Ways and Property, Chapter 4, Cemetery, Section 6, Fees and Charges, and Section 7, Lot Sales, by removing the definition of resident and the reference to resident and non-resident rates, and establishing the fee for a new certificate by resolution of the city council. That's a lot to digest. So, on that ordinance, I'd like
I'll make a motion to approve
a
this.
motion. Motion from Councilman Spath. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Councilwoman Seeley. Discussion. Scarlett, you want to give us some?
Well, the B is going to be should be completely struck. That's what it currently states, and the recommendation is to strike it because we no longer have a resident and a non-resident rate. It is all one.
Can you give me a line?
16.
Through 22.
Okay.
So that will, so we would actually add that right below it that says staff recommends. We will add just striking all of that. And then the purchase for the new grave space, we're doing the same thing with this, the certificates. We're doing the same thing with this that we just changed in the impact fee ordinance, where instead of having the fee in the resolution, or excuse me, in the ordinance, we're saying the fee for a new certificate will be established by resolution of the city council, and the transfer fee on the next one will say the same thing on both 4 and 5. That's what brought it to our attention. Yes, and we have already updated the resolution. That's what brought it to our attention, is we had a customer come in to purchase or to transfer a cemetery fee, and the transfer fee now is $50 on the resolution, and that's posted on the website, but the ordinance is calling out $20, and she let us know, or he, I'm not sure who it was, and they also brought up the idea that since we no longer have a resident and a non-resident rate, it would be less confusing to just take that right out.
I'll hold that.
Yes, sir.
So my question is, has the fee been adopted? Because we looked on the website, Ryan and I, and we could not find a fee for transfer. And so we checked that out on the website now, and we could have possibly not looked in the right place.
Ryan just talked to me about that. It's not on the fee schedule. It's actually posted on the cemetery page. It's got all of the fees. The fee for space, the fee for open, the fee for closing, all of that is on the cemetery page. It's not on the fee schedule, and our fee schedule does need to be updated.
Was that adopted already as a price for transfer or whatnot?
Yes.
Did the council adopt that some time ago?
Yes, on May 24th, 2015, it adopted Resolution 015-2019 adjusting the cemetery fees.
2015?
Or, excuse me, 2019.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, 2019. I'm sorry.
Okay, so our mistake, right?
Well, not a mistake. It's just
We were just looking in the wrong spot.
We just
So
gotta
that
catch
says
it up.
Here on May 24th, they approved the resolution.
I did read that, sorry.
So,
And we'll update the website.
so in 2019, when the council passed it, what we should have done at the time is not just adjust the fees, but also to amend the city code.
So we're just cleaning up what we should
Cleaning
have
it up.
done in May.
Right, exactly.
So my only comments about this are, I spoke with Ryan. The cemetery is important to me. And this has nothing to do with this ordinance, but I'm looking forward to, and I've asked him to put on their radar a master plan for the cemetery. I have some ideas, and so we're looking forward to that. That's all my.
Once we get a general plan.
Yeah, we're gonna get the general plan, then the cemetery master plan.
There you go.
Everybody has a plan after.
Everyone's got their, I think I was in line first.
For what?
Parks.
I think,
We'll do it all.
I think the council has more than enough to keep their,
And the staff has transportation that we're anxiously for.
right.
Thank
They have
you.
plenty on their agenda for this current year. Okay. Any more questions on the background of why the changes are being made, the language in the draft ordinance we have here? Further revisit with Ryan and city staff.
No questions here.
No questions?
I do.
Okay.
So is the cemetery is subsidized by the city?
Effectively, yes.
So why is it the same price for non-residents as residents if we're subsidizing?
Because it's not an ordinance that we can enforce. And we decided, rather than constantly having people come in and purchase spaces for people in other areas,
Got it.
we just needed to have a standard rate.
Okay.
So,
Our rates were also quite low as we compared to other areas, and we, but again,
when we looked at it, the cities that did not have different rates for residents and non-residents had recently made that change because our city staff would find themselves in a position of saying, okay, so you're a resident? Show me your ID. And it's a real awkward position to put our city staff in, to make people prove that, you know. So
Or to
we-
get their friend to come in.
Well, right, so,
As a point, none of the ones that are in the cemetery that are buried there are actually residents of Providence, since it's not in Providence. So they're all non-residents.
Good point. Thank you.
okay, can we vote?
I'm ready.
okay, as long as everybody's ready. Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve the ordinance. All in favor?
Aye.
Nay? Unanimous. We've got a good record tonight. Everything's unanimous. We've got a team going here. Good stuff. All right. Okay. All right. We have one agenda item to cover, and then council reports, and then we're wrapping. Item number 3, ordinance number 2020-003, code amendment. Setbacks. Providence City Council will consider for adoption an ordinance amending Providence City Code Title 10 zoning regulations, Chapter 8 area regulations, Section 1 area regulations, and Section 3 setbacks. I need a motion from the council to open up discussion.
I move that we adopt ordinance number 2020-003, code amendment setback.
Motion from Councilwoman Eck. Do I have a second?
Kurt.
It's like egg backwards.
That's a good. Oh. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilwoman Seeley. Discussion.
This was really complicated for me. So I'm doing a lot of trusting on this.
I have questions about the different zoning designations, like the CND, it looks like that's been
struck.
That's been removed.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, the commercial neighborhood district. And I wondered about the single, the CMH.
Single family mobile home.
Yeah, because I looked at the map, I could not find anywhere in the city that has that zoning. So why isn't that one struck?
Because we actually have to say that if somebody came in, you could consider it. You don't have to zone it, but
So then why can we strike Sandy?
because that's the mobile homes fall under fair housing. The commercial neighborhood district was a district that tried to blend commercial businesses in residential areas. And so a few years ago, the Planning Commission and the City Council worked on that, and they ended up, instead of rewriting that ordinance for that, they ended up striking it, and we didn't get it struck in our chart when we updated our ordinances, so we're just doing a house cleaning job on that. But it's not a
The other
housing
one, even though
requirement.
we don't even have anything of
I don't
that
understand.
designation, we can just.
How mobile homes are fair housing? That doesn't make sense to me.
It's through HUD. HUD has some pretty strict rules when it comes to that you can't discriminate against them. So,
But if there's no zone for it, then we can't discriminate against them.
So what comes
did you
first?
want to have?
Honestly,
did you wanna
I
have a
zoomed
spot
in
to
because I
stop?
can only think of one mobile home in the entire city across from the elementary school, and it's not even in that zone.
That's right.
So are we saying if someone comes to the city that
It's like a permanent.
we turn them away and say it's not an option? Or
Can we get rid of the one that's already there?
Mobile.
Mobile home?
Know that.
We do not
Actually-
allow mobile homes in any of the current residential districts that we have a zone for.
So somebody would have to come and
They would
rezone
have
to
to come in
that
and
zone.
actually ask for a rezone to that zone in order to
and
have
we
a
come before
mobile
the
home.
council?
And there are some, the zone itself talks about, requirements on creating, the mobile home neighborhood. So it's got requirements to it. That you don't just come in and zone one lot.
I was just curious because I'm trying to acclimate myself to the alphabet soup of the zoning designations. Understand what they all are.
Those are good
And
questions.
I was like, I don't know, like, why is that? Anyway.
The only one who's got them all memorized and taken to heart is Scarlett. Whether it's council, city staff, Ryan, Jesse, Rob, nobody's got them committed to memory in the city except Scarlett, guaranteed.
And I look
I'd
them
have
up,
to
I
ask
just
her.
know where they are. But, so just a tiny bit of background, and planning commission, staff struggled with this quite a bit. Planning commission worked on this. What we're seeing is it really doesn't matter on the lot size itself. Many people are just wanting to go from setback to setback. And so we were running into problems with people being able to fit certain things. We're getting contractors that were talking to us about our setbacks. So we decided that we needed to give it an overall look. And then one of the things that we did was we added attached dwelling units. Since this chart was first worked on, and so we added setbacks for attached dwelling units. The premise behind the carrots that are now being crossed out, the planning commission quite a few years ago did not want developments to come in and look cookie cutter. They wanted to give developers and lot buyers options to be able to move the house a little bit forward, a little bit backward, depending on their house style, what they needed, if they wanted a bigger front yard, bigger backyard, that type of thing. With what we did this time when we went that go around is the theory was more we want to have a minimum of 20 feet in the front yard, and the planning commission recommended after much talk a minimum of 15 feet in the backyard, except for in the mobile home district, which is 10 feet in the backyard.
So they took away the option to have a flexibility?
Well, now you can have all kinds of flexibility. Now you don't have to meet 50, you only have to meet, now you've got 35 being taken out.
Okay.
And part of the problem is, just really some of the homes that they wanted to be able to utilize, and the creativity of placement on the lot, it just seemed like we were bumping up against problems. That's not to say you have to agree with what they're recommending, but that's what their recommendation has come through with. One of the things that we had done and allowed for, one of the things that we did, we relied kind of on the building code for distance between residential structures on the same lot. And it really hadn't been a big deal to us because until we passed the detached accessory dwelling unit, there was only one residential structure allowed on the lots for many years. Now that there's two, we can't rely on the building code, because if you build your houses correctly, you can have zero lot line, zero distance between the structures. And we felt, the planning commission felt like they needed to have a say in that. So that's what that 15 feet is that the distance between the residential structures on the same lot would have to be 15 feet, and then on the single family mobile home it would be 10. On page 5 of 13, in the height, once again, we relied on the building code, and it's probably lucky that no one really realized that Providence would let you go as high as you wanted to. Because if you're relying on the building code and you build it structurally sound, you can build, I don't know, how high is the highest building in New York or somewhere? I mean, literally, we did not have a cap on height as long as they met the building code.
Nobody noticed.
No, nobody really noticed.
So we're cleaning up.
We're cleaning up. So now we have caps on heights. That's what that is. We talked about, we did some clarification. We had a lot of people we have some developers still that come in and say, no, I want everybody to have at least a 30-foot setback. If a developer wants to do that, that meets our minimum. It exceeds our minimum, so they can do that. If they record it on the plat that it's going to be a 30-foot setback, then we have to honor it, even though our ordinance would let somebody go lower. It's different than CCNRs. Providence City does not enforce CCNRs, but in a recorded plat, we do enforce. And so we wanted to change some things in our text, not just in the chart, but in the text, to let people, to give people that understanding. That's why it talks about subdivision setbacks. We talk about setbacks adjacent to alleys, which goes back to our both the life cycle and the multifamily housing ordinances talk about utilization of alleys. And we didn't have, even though we've had multifamily for a long time, we didn't have an ordinance dedicated to the design of it, and so we needed to address that. We talked about what happens if a lot is reduced by road widening or definitions of non-conforming buildings and structures. We talked about the use of setback. Every part of the setback shall be unobstructed from the ground to the sky, except as otherwise provided, and this is a big deal. People want to get creative with what they call with window wells, and almost create like walkout patios, only they're kind of enclosed, so they're calling them a window well, but yet you can walk out and you can have a little setting room out there, but they're calling that a window well. And it was just kind of a hard thing to decide if that really met with the ordinance or not. We realized that we needed to talk a little bit about window wells. And so we put a whole section in on window wells because they've become, with all of the concrete, the new design and everything, with all the concrete retaining walls and the concrete architectural features, we had to address it. We had a home that came in, really cool looking retaining walls and everything, but the concrete planter that they were going to put just 10 feet off the sidewalk because they didn't feel like it was part of the principal structure was on the low side, it was 6x6 walls. On the down side, it was 14 feet. So there was a concrete structure out there, and we had to say, that doesn't meet the setback. And we went back and forth on that, and lucky for us, the homeowners didn't realize what the architect had really designed, and when they saw it, they were glad that we asked them to fix that, because they really didn't want to have that big concrete thing. But because of that, we put wording in here for those type of things. And so that's the basis of where all this is coming from, is we've talked about doing a bright line and saying, okay, we're going to have a 7-foot setback. You don't cross the line. No window well, nothing. There's going to be 7 feet of open area. Unfortunately, that's kind of against industry standards. Industry standards is kind of, you get the setback and then you get to encroach with architectural features a little bit. And so we felt like if we did the bright line theory, again, we would be climbing up up the mountain or swimming upstream rather than really achieving the goal. So that's the thought process and the basis that staff and planning commission struggled with. The final thing that we discussed that we added to this is double frontage interior and odd shaped lots. There are certain lots that are just darn hard to decide if that's a front yard, a side yard, or just exactly triangle type shaped lots, sometimes kind of octagon type shaped lots. Interesting lots, and you can do real cool things with them until it comes to setbacks and the way somebody wants to set their house on there. And so we dedicated a little bit to odd shaped lots so that our people that are looking at zoning compliance have a little bit of guideline to go on, rather than just saying, oh, I think this has got to be the front yard. So that's the background.
Everybody get all that?
It's a lot. This has been a lot of work for planning and zoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Josh suffered through some of that too.
I did. Still suffering.
I know.
I addressed my questions with Ryan and he answered them, so I'm good.
Is there a motion?
Council, any other questions? This gentleman, Ralph, has a comment. Want to come up?
Ralph Daniels. I'm object to decreasing the setbacks for the simple fact, if somebody to the east of me decide they want to build a house right next to my garden spot, that's going to shade my house. I cut a tree down so I can have, if somebody on the south of me decide to put something there, I'm going to lose my garden spot. I'm not going to be able to grow my garden. And lucky enough, I don't have, well, I do have some raspberries and blackberries on the west side, and somebody built over there.
You have a nice neighbor.
So I object to decreasing the setbacks.
Mayor, just point of clarification. There's a motion and a second out there right now?
Yes.
Right? Oh, okay. And we're just on the discussion.
We're just discussion. We had one member of the audience who wanted to comment. He was welcome. Staff, anything else you want to add? Any questions?
No, I've got some. Yeah, I was on planning and zoning, Bob and others, and hammered over this. My views have changed over time. The one that I still can't get over here is the accessory dwelling unit setbacks. I see it, and I look at this chart now, and it's interesting. It's this way because the accessory dwelling units mirrors the primary residence. And I can see the logic behind that. They're both building dwellings. That should be the case. But in my mind, I struggle with the accessory dwelling because in each of those, in almost every instance, that will be an additional building that is going on a lot. And I think there's a reasonable expectation by the existing homeowners and landowners that there is some spacing between their primary residence and where another habitable residence will be on a neighboring lot. And I brought this example up with the group. At least this is one for me. I think we can all picture ourselves in this situation. Someone goes out and smokes a cigarette on their backyard. I guarantee it's going to fly farther than 25 or 30 feet. It's going to be really, really clear. And then you're like, oh man, there's an accessory dwelling unit, or there's something else there. Maybe there's something noisy going on there. So I realize it makes the accessory dwelling unit almost untenable, but I'm uncomfortable with the setbacks of accessory dwelling unit because in every instance almost every instance they'll be added to additional property, and I think the neighboring properties they have a reasonable expectation that there won't be a home that close to their backyard property line or side yard. So the other issues I agree with. I generally like what's been done here. Scarlett talked about the triangular lots. There are a lot of weird situations here. I've looked at them, and my position has changed on those because I'm just like, yeah, I can see that. And I definitely see the pattern that we have people putting big homes that are taking up the whole lots. So I'm there with you 100% on those. I just can't get over the accessory dwelling unit, so I'm gonna voting no tonight for that in hopes that that could be straightened out, so.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Are you opposed to accessory dwelling units as a rule, or the setbacks to them?
The setbacks to them.
Specific.
Yeah, but I do recognize that it's this fine balance with the accessory dwelling units, you know, like because we have minimum distance between existing structures and property line, there aren't as many lots that will accommodate an accessory dwelling unit. I get that, you know, there are fewer ones, but the way that it's written, I see a lot of our lots turning into flag lots, you know, which is a desirable developer issue. I mean, we allow, other than we specify the size of the accessory dwelling unit, how big it can be. And I just don't want to live in a Providence with a bunch of flag lots or the permission to do it. I like the character of residential neighborhoods, and I think setbacks are a key piece of enforcing that. So,
I'd make a comment. Myself, I am opposed to the accessory dwelling units, detached units on the same lot. I just struggle with that immensely, just because it's so destructive to the character. The only place that probably is going to work out to do that is in the Old Town Providence, and I just feel it's very disruptive to the Old Town. And I would vote no on this too, for that reason.
okay.
Council, any other comments?
Just the same clarifying question. It's not setbacks for yours like it is for Josh. It is accessory dwelling units.
Accessory dwelling units, the character that it creates in the Old Town Providence.
Just was trying to clarify the difference between those two statements.
So the history on that accessory dwelling, and one of the reasons that we approved that was because we were required to come up with other housing. What's the word we were doing? Options. And that was one way, knowing that it would be a rare instance, but it is on our book showing it could happen. I see it happening more on some of those like acre lots up in like Hillsboro. You know, you're right, Old Town Providence. The way the setbacks are, it's going to be hard to do so. But that was the reasoning that we ended up with this in the first place. Just so you know.
I would just say, I agree with Christina. I think there are lots where that can work, and that's why I started with the setbacks on the accessory dwelling units, because I think on the right lot you could probably put them on there, and I really don't think it'd be a bother to people. But I think every home in my neighborhood with this zoning ordinance could put an accessory dwelling unit on the back, and I don't think that's what our neighbors are after. Not every home. We've got some that are pretty small SFTs, but
How large of a lot are you on?
we're on about 3/4. And we talked to Mayor, we talked about putting accessory dwelling unit on there. We were even looking at it ourselves. We ended up, looking at an attached unit, for our mother-in-law, but, we pulled the trigger on neither of those. But I imagine if we had done that, our neighbors in the back corner, I can see them taking issue with that, and I think I should probably put it closer to my house.
What do you think of an appropriate setback? What would you like to see on the accessory dwelling setbacks? Proposal from you.
I'd probably limit it. Right now it's allowed on all lot sizes, so I'd probably bump that up to, I don't have this memorized like Scarlett does. I'd probably say it needs to be an SFT or larger, and I think by function of setback would have to be, I don't know, 20 feet at least. I could maybe get there 20 feet, 25 feet. Once again, they're going in almost exclusively in existing neighborhoods, and I think it needs to be non-disruptive.
So maybe I don't understand this. I have a question, because you said the accessory dwelling unit has the exact same setbacks as the primary residence.
That's as I read it, Bob. Am I reading that correctly?
How it's written?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
what would be, they can't be outside of the perimeter of where the actual primary residence would sit if they met the maximum setbacks anyway, is that right? I mean, if you had a neighbor who wanted to take up the maximum amount of their lot with their house, their accessory dwelling unit of a neighbor next door who built half the size of the house isn't gonna have more structure on their property than the mega house next door. Is it? It's
But
not gonna
no,
have
I-
more structure
Oh,
on your.
let me be clear. I recognize that someone could tear down an existing home or build a home that where the setback was just as close to the neighboring, I think this is what you're getting at, the neighboring house. Like that structure could occupy that space. But I think the principle behind the accessory dwelling unit is they'll go into, it's infill. They'll go into existing areas.
Where they
And,
feel like they have space in
and I think there's a reasonable expectation by neighboring property owners what those setbacks were when they initially constructed.
But Janelle has
So-
a good point in that I believe in the ordinance it requires the size of an accessory dwelling cannot, is it half of what the original or the existing home is?
Half of it can't be greater than 50% of the original home, or,
So it couldn't
and this
take
is
up
where
as
I'm-
much
I'm
space,
gonna
but they
make a
could
mistake
put it
then.
up against one side of the property line, the setback, and leave way more space on one other side. But it's not going to be like this size and then this size. The accessory dwelling will be much smaller according to the ordinance.
the accessory dwelling, if you had a 10,000 square foot home as your primary structure, you could not build a 5,000 square foot accessory dwelling unit. There's the cap, I believe it is 1,500 square feet. So it's half the size of the existing, the primary residence, or I'll look it up to make sure, 1,500 square feet, yes.
One of those two.
The lesser of those two.
Is that the footprint? Or what if you
Square
go,
footage.
what if you go height? So we're looking at half the original structure in the footprint of the accessory dwelling, or are you looking at the overall square footage of the home? So if
Overall
you-
square footage.
So if a principal structure had a basement in it, it was included in it, you could put an accessory dwelling that was on one level, but you could go high.
You can go 35 feet
As
high.
high as the max on the. primary.
So, just practical standpoint, Carrie Kirk, whose party house, that actually, there was accessory dwelling, just another home to add to the party, but, your home butts up with prices, they've got a deep lot, I think their lot's bigger than ours.
Well, the
it's about an
prices
acre.
have talked about subdividing theirs.
They subdivide, or they could, according
Do
to
an
this,
accessory dwelling.
according to this ordinance, they could build an accessory dwelling unit 10 feet off of your backyard, and I've been in your backyard, I have a good idea of what that's like, and that, I think would fundamentally change the feeling and space of your backyard. Now, granted, you like the prices, but there may be other people where you just want a little bit of a buffer there. So I think we all have to kind of look at those scenarios and see what it looks like.
Well, we need to leave it as an option for our housing compliance. It's true, unless we don't have, I don't know how many options we're required to have and how many we actually do have. I haven't looked at that. But if we removed accessory dwelling
We'd have to come up with something.
attached, we'd have to come up with another option to meet compliance.
So one of the things about the ordinance that the council put in that was passed last year was a requirement, very last paragraph, that said the city staff shall report to the council how many permits have been issued for accessory dwelling units. And Scarlett, you have all this stuff in your head. Have any accessory dwelling units been approved?
Two.
Two.
One
And
was
where
an
did they go?
One was an existing building, and the way they had this planned a long time ago, I think. They sat their existing, it was an accessory building that they met all of the primary structure setbacks with that existing, they had a huge lot. And they converted a portion of that building in order to make it an accessory dwelling unit.
So
And
is
I
it
can't
existing, like a shop building or something, or they converted?
And actually, the other one, I don't think they've actually come in. They came in, talked to us about zoning, but I don't know if the zoning, I don't know if they actually went through the building permit process. It'll be on 100 West if they did, near Bear Welding. Are they building a house near Bear, new?
There is a new home that's right next to
There is
Bear
a house
Welding,
built.
There's a new home that's been built, but is there another smaller home being built next to the new home?
I haven't seen that.
To the west, there's a big lot there, I don't know.
Yeah,
In front, to the north side, there's a large lot too, belonging to Creasy's.
right. I don't think that they ever finished, but they did come in. We've had quite a few people actually, at least, I would say 10 different people have come in and sat down with me and tried to work the numbers, and their lots don't work. And these aren't small lots. They're fairly good sized lots, 16,000 square feet. But because of the way their existing home is sitting, they can't meet the setbacks. And I don't even think they can when we reduce it to 15 feet.
Well, I was just a point of clarification on that, because we talked about some of those too, right? And this is the issue that I find correct me if I'm wrong, some of those people, they come and they don't want to sit that close to their house. They want to put it as far from their house as possible because they feel like it'll be sitting in too much of their yard. To which I say to those people, you should, if you're really excited about mom living in the backyard, why don't you have her 10 feet from your house? Why do you have to put her in the backyard where the neighbors have to deal with her? You know, I mean, because that has happened, right? I mean, they don't. It'll work, but they don't like how close it is to their house.
Well, actually, I don't know if I'd had anybody like that. The ones I've had physically, they won't work.
Well, I know we talked about one in planning
There
and
was
zoning
one
because I went and visited the lot.
She came and actually presented her case.
That's right.
But
She didn't apply, but she
Right.
presented her case.
Right,
But she didn't want it closer to her house. She wanted it on the property
right,
line.
there was one.
Yeah.
But I've probably done 8 or 10 that people have come in and we've sat down and looked at their various lots and what they've got to work with, and most of them already have an accessory building or something in there, and then we have this rule that says you can't take up more than 25% of your backyard or your yard, if it's a side yard or rear yard, with the combined total of all the accessory buildings, including an accessory dwelling unit.
So there's
if-
more to the puzzle than just
Yeah.
setbacks is what you're saying.
Yeah, and
That's
so it's
really-
actually quite difficult to get them to fit. So, but we've had quite a few inquiries. We've only had, to my knowledge, 1, maybe 2, that actually were able to make it work on their lot.
I have one more question. One that I'm thinking of, excuse me, in the area of Grandview, where we don't have curb, gutter, and sidewalk. And if a person was to come along, 400 East, and want to put an accessory dwelling unit in the backyard which fronted 400 East, it's not the same as subdividing, we wouldn't require improvements,
No, I was about to say yes we do, but no, we wouldn't on an accessory dwelling.
would not require any curb, gutter, sidewalk, anything like that.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it's a good thing I looked it up, and that's why I really pay attention to where they are, not so much what they say, because our maximum size for the accessory dwelling unit is 1,200 square feet, not 1,500. So
it's a smaller of 50% or 1,200 square feet.
Yeah.
And to Councilman Smith's point, that 1,200 square feet could be 2-story, footprint could be 600 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
Or a basement.
Right.
Okay.
The question that you're asking, friend, just if it was a principal structure, if somebody was coming in on an unimproved lot and they were putting in a principal structure, then we would make them put the improvements along that lot. If it was a lot that required curb, gutter, and sidewalk and park strip, we would make them put that in. But if they were coming in with their principal structure and their accessory dwelling unit at the same time, which we have had several people that have come and talked to us about that. The family's going to move here. They want a place for mom and dad in their own accessory dwelling unit. I've not seen any of those actually come through yet, but we have had some questions about it. If that kind of a thing was going to happen on an unimproved lot, because we're putting in a primary structure, it has nothing to do with the accessory structure, but the primary structure triggers improvements. We just changed that. Gosh, can you remember, Josh, were you on the planning commission when we changed that? It's not been very long ago, so it must have been just before.
With the improvements for I don't remember this.
Yeah. Oh, I think Ryan reminded me it's probably in late 2018 when we changed that. And so we do require, but only on primary structures that they put in improvements.
So like, take your lot, for instance, if you want to put a accessory dwelling unit in front of your house, there would be no requirement for frontal improvements or anything like that.
Actually, I don't think I can put the accessory dwelling unit in front of my house.
I'm not trying to pick on you.
No, I know, but I
thinking
think
of an
that might be one of the restrictions.
You can't do it in front.
Yeah,
Oh, you can't do them in front?
I gotta look at that. I know we talked about that quite a bit, and I cannot remember. I'm not gonna take time during the
I think
ordinance.
the previous council, one of the council members used your property as an example. So I think we did discuss that. And I think you did say it couldn't happen. But
Yeah,
and there's a couple other properties in town that are set, primary housing house is set way back. They've got a huge front yard, and we use some of those examples. And the lot's obviously big enough, everything else.
Lot makes a lot more sense.
And I'm trying to think of what street that's in the older part of town. I see him out irrigating in his hip boots early in the morning sometimes. But, gosh, I can't remember his name. You probably remember. Huge front yard, a lot of grass. House is set way back. Would it work there? And we concluded it would not, because the way our code's written and the ordinance that we passed.
because the primary structure has to be the biggest of the two structures. So theoretically, if I wanted to knock our house down, so it was, and build a new house, and then an accessory dwelling unit behind it that was no bigger than 12,000 square feet, or 1,200, sorry, that would be a huge house, sorry, 1,200, then yeah, my lot you could definitely do one there. But that's why though, there's really I shouldn't say very few, but it's gonna take just the right place to be able to, and the right setting of the principal structure to be able to make it work.
Hey Scarlett, I found it in the code. It says it can't be in front of the primary structure.
Thank you, Jesse.
I think we should vote.
Okay. Any more questions, comments? We have a motion on the table, and the motion.
One more comment.
Sure, come on up, brother.
You talk about it not making, not applying to very many. If you reduce it, it's going to apply to more.
Your math is completely logical. And I think we all get it. Okay. We have what's the motion? It's been a while since.
It was a motion.
The motion was to approve the ordinance as it's written. So without any modifications, that's what the motion that's on the table. So shall we call for a vote?
Yes.
The motion that's on the table. So the motion is pretty simple. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Nay?
Nay. Nay.
I don't know, I'm still deciding.
Okay, we have a maybe, we have a possibly, we have. Okay. So if you don't vote, then the mayor gets to vote. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna vote, I just haven't decided yet.
Okay, so the ayes were Christina Eck and
Carrie.
Harry Kirk. Okay.
And then there was a,
There was a nay from Josh and from Brent, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to finding a different housing option than the accessory dwelling, a detached accessory dwelling units, because I don't think they're a great option, but I also didn't go through the analysis process of all the choices.
But that's also not what we're voting on.
I know.
No pressure.
So we can revisit that.
I would want to revisit the housing choices, personally.
So we have a motion on the table,
I know.
which is what you're asked to vote.
I know.
So you can't amend their motion.
I'm not.
You can ask them to amend their motion. If they're willing to amend their
She
motion,
gets
there might
it.
be something more acceptable.
what it is.
But if you vote nay, then we get to talk about it more. If that's what you need.
Right, we can revisit it. We can say, let's bring it up and discuss it, have it on the agenda for the March council meeting.
So you can
So
vote
that's an
nay,
option.
and
You can
that gives
vote
you
nay.
time.
Right, nay.
Okay, all right, motion fails.
Wait.
If you want to revisit the detached accessory dwelling units, voting nay on this doesn't do that. This just doesn't pass
All that the
all
planning and
the
zoning just
setbacks.
did.
So, I mean, I don't want you to reduce your, to change your vote, but if
I
you
have no
want to.
problem with the setbacks. I see the points that both, Councilman Paulson and Steph made. I don't.
So let me just.
So I'm
let me
not
fi-
giving you good
let-
logic.
Let me finish clarifying. If you want to change the detached accessory dwelling unit ordinance, that's a different thing. Really doesn't have anything to do with this. And if you do end up that you decide that you don't want detached accessory dwelling units, then we will also modify this to take that out. But by voting no on this, we still have detached accessory dwelling units.
We still have detached accessory dwelling units, but they will inherit, they will inherit or use the existing setbacks as they have.
Right.
So I mean, now if someone to amend their motion and pass the setbacks except for accessory dwelling unit, then we could continue the discussion on accessory dwelling units, see if we could get somewhere where we all feel comfortable.
Yeah, who
Right.
made the motion?
Who made the original motion?
I'm looking back here.
might have been
It
me.
Well,
was
I think
Eric.
since you made a motion and you had a vote, if you want to change it, you need to make a motion to reconsider.
I'll
And then if
make
you-
a motion to reconsider.
I have a motion to reconsider the ordinance which was just voted down from Councilman
Second.
Paulson. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Second from Councilwoman Seeley. Okay, now Scarlett's point was,
If all in favor.
You have to vote.
we can vote on an amended motion.
So this is
Someone
voting
will
on the reconsideration, and then you would have a motion on what you want it to be. But this is,
So we have to vote on them.
you have to vote to bring it back
Bring it
into
back.
consideration.
Okay, so we
Because
have,
it died, but you gotta
we
bring it
have a
back.
first and second to bring it back. So we have to vote on bringing it.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so we can just go ahead with the vote. Okay, we have a motion on the table to bring this back for reconsideration. Did I say that right? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, nay? Unanimous, okay. Now,
I make a motion that we approve resolution, ordinance number 2020-003 code amendment setbacks, except for the, portion of that setback that pertains to accessory dwelling units, and that item be moved forward to a future council meeting for discussion.
I second that.
okay, motion on the table from Councilman Paulson, second from Councilwoman Eck. Discussion on the motion, which is to approve the ordinance and the changes as written, with the exception of the section that addresses the setbacks for accessory dwelling units. Did I say that right?
Verbatim, that was awesome.
Got you down. Okay, so that's the motion on the table. We need further discussion. Can we call for a vote?
I'm okay with the vote.
Aye. Yeah.
Ready.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion unanimous, nays, no nays, so that passed unanimous. Okay, all right. So when do we bring it up again?
We can
My
ask-
motion was the next meeting.
Okay, okay. All right, very good. So what we have left are council reports and what's on the council's assignments. Assignment list, Ryan, you have that there with you. If the council members would go through the list of their assignments and bring us up to date on where things are at.
While Ryan's looking that up,
Yep.
there is a bill out there, and I should have got the number and I'll email it to you, but I think it's an important one to keep in mind. It's got to do with land use decisions. And-
House Bill 273.
And that what they want to do is remove two things. If you go to the property ombudsman and they make a decision and you disagree with the decision, whether you're the applicant with him or whether you're the other person, whether you're the plaintiff or the defendant, and you disagree with the decision, and you say, I'm going to go to court, and the court rules for the property ombudsman, the way it is right now, let's say it was the city, and we decided that we had the property ombudsman, we didn't like his decision, we decided we were right, we needed to pursue it with court, we lost. We would have to pay attorney fees for the other party. Right now, that's the way it is. And we actually were on the receiving side of that not too long ago. But the other thing that they're doing now is, along with attorney fees, we would also be responsible for damages. Just like, not anxiety, I can't think of the word. Pain and suffering, yes. Those punitive damages. And so that increases the liability a lot. If we turn down a subdivision for some reason, we feel really strongly in turning down a subdivision, and we turn it down, and we feel like we're on good ground, but we go to the ombudsman and he says, nope, the developer's in the right, and we say, no, we're going to court, and we lose on that, and that developer comes back. Not only are we paying his $50,000 in attorney fees, we may be paying millions in damages that he could say we cost him from the time that he missed putting his infrastructure in and his sales and of his lots and all kinds of things. And the other thing that it does is it removes governmental immunity on land use decisions. So when Max and Rob and I make a land use decision on a conditional use, and if we get challenged and for whatever reason we went to court, we each personally would be held responsible. We would not fall under governmental immunity. Same with,
not you personally, just you personally, not the city.
That's what's currently being proposed as a law. It hasn't passed.
and that's for the planning commission too.
Yes.
And so anybody that makes a land use decision loses, and it's only if you involve the property ombudsman, and it's only if you're arguing against the property ombudsman and it goes to court, then that's how they're changing it. That's a really scary law to me. And so I think
who's the author of that? Or authors?
I don't remember. I will email it.
It makes the property ombudsman's office a decision. Yeah.
Oh.
It makes them the authoritative, and don't question them because there's high penalties for questioning it if it goes that way.
So there's a long list of,
Yeah.
in the draft language, and it's been a couple weeks since I read it. It had a long list of remedies and compensatory damages that the winning party could collect, that the League of Cities and Towns said very possibly would bankrupt some of our small Utah cities. And the League of Cities is very much against it. That being one reason. But, I mean, let's take an example of someone who wants to build something, or a developer that comes to town. They could say, I lost this profit opportunity because the project was delayed. I had pain and suffering. There's a long, long list of things that could be claimed in court if this legislation passes. The question came up in Saturday's legislative session, and the only one who could answer it, who understood the bill, was Representative Potter from District 3 North End of the Valley, and he said he was absolutely against it unless there are some modifications that would make it acceptable. So, but he did not like the idea of the power the ombudsman would have over this. So. Okay. So let's get back to council reports. So I'll start at the top. Councilmember Eck, you have legislative and administrative or ambassador.
Yeah, and I don't even know what transient room means on legislative.
Be happy to visit with you about that. I'd like to be able to educate on that one. If that's one we don't know, I'd be happy to do an educational training on that one.
So in regards to me being the ambassador of the city celebration, the October Kraut, I have some thoughts. I would like to take your temperature on them. I know this is not a long discussion that I want to have tonight, but I was wondering if you'd be willing to email me your thoughts in regards to making some changes to our city celebration. There's history in regards to the Sauerkraut Festival. Sauerkraut has been something that's been important to Providence City, and I'm sure you know the history of it. And if not, please let me know and I'll give you the history on it. However, seems that now we can't do the sauerkraut like we used to. It's not the same celebration. I would like to know, I've asked myself, what is our why for a city celebration? Why are we doing it? Why are we trying to keep a tradition that I think has gone? And I think we can look at what our why is and realize the reason we would want a city celebration is to have community. In regards to that, I think it might be wise to consider not having an October Kraut in October, but maybe consider our why as community in maybe having a concert in the park once a month in the summer, maybe a celebration around what the next best thing in Providence has been historically, and that is baseball game, Wolverines, Blue Sox, celebration, food, a party, that type of a thing. I don't know that our city celebration is, I mean, we spend a fair amount of money on it. It's taxing on the staff. I don't, in my opinion, feel like it's a successful thing. So I just need to know what, if that'd be something that you would want me to explore more of, maybe making a change.
I would, and I've talked a little bit about this, and that's why right now those things are bundled up in the recreation resolution that we passed today, which is why one of the reasons I wanted to revisit that, because I see community engagement and community celebrations not as a recreation function, but as something else. I'd like to kind of parse those out so we can really develop a comprehensive plan to engage the community and have events.
Okay.
So,
any other comments right off the bat?
I want to make a change. I can say unequivocally that I think it was unsuccessful this last year. I mean, we went and campaigned. I think the most successful part of my experience with the celebration was getting to know Brent better. I'm serious.
Well, and I think it's
like, other than that,
And that was done over Vaughn's Park.
and I thought the car show was great.
Yep.
But as I visited with people the entire day, I would say 1 in 4 was an actual resident of Providence City. I mean, the car show is a great thing. I think it's not, I feel like it was organized, really well and well advertised, and it has history behind it. But I don't think that has to be our city celebration.
And so the car show too hasn't been part of Providence City's history for very long. I believe maybe 6 years we've been doing the car show.
About 15.
When Ralph Call was on the city council, was that 15 years ago? No.
Mayor Lichty.
Not that long ago.
When Ron
Anyway.
Lichty was on the council.
Anyway, I would like to consider making a change, not having it in October. It's cold. The weather's so unpredictable. Anyway, so maybe email me your thoughts and comments, and maybe we can explore other options. I wish we could still have the sauerkraut dinner.
We can still make sauerkraut. It's just, we have a high hurdle.
I know, but I'm just saying,
When the
like,
state stepped
well,
in.
and too, like, the old timers in Providence that appreciated that are gone or going. So now we have a different demographic
Or
in
they make
Providence.
was it the sauerkraut that did them in?
Or they
That,
make them
yeah, but I'm just saying that the new generation, or the generation that is maybe, who would attend, they don't have that history of their grandfather making it and that type of a thing. So
So the Historic Planning Commission used to put on a whole thing about sauerkraut recipes and
Yeah.
history, and
Do a cook-off.
that's kind of all.
it's awesome. If
When I promoted sauerkraut, I had to go
I love
ask Brent how to make
sauerkraut.
sauerkraut.
I love sauerkraut. I make it at my house It stinks.
You know, there's
I love it.
sauerkraut ice cream and sauerkraut cake.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Anyway, I would like your comments and feedback. If you'll send me them via
My kids
email,
are
then I
like
can
up
meet
in
with
arms
city
with
staff
those
about it.
vegetables and their chocolate cake.
That's all.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Burke,
Oh, perfect.
water conservation and secondary water and youth council.
Okay, well, I'll skip the water stuff.
You what?
No, I don't. I've been following what the legislature's doing, but it's a Greek to me. So hopefully, if there's something important that they legislate, I'll catch it. I did go to youth council meeting, and it was awesome. I doubted that it really existed, and it does. And they're cute kids, and I think that we could help support the youth council by maybe recruiting some more kids that would want to be involved in creating fun events for younger children. And we participate in the Millville Easter egg hunt, and I've always thought, why doesn't Providence do something like that? But the youth council is doing something for Easter, and I think that they can play a role in that sense of community. Something that I would really like to see happen, one of the things on my assignments is Trails Park and Rec Master Plan. I would really like to see a survey go out to the community about things like I would like to see the city festivals as part of that survey. I think it could be bundled
we spoke
in.
of that. How do we do that?
When we,
I even offered to start writing the survey.
and I have some that I've shared that of other surveys, and we can do that. Normally, you get your general plan finalized, and then you go and get a consultant to help you through. So we select a consultant, and they will help us because we want to have the questions that are asked be relevant to the things they would like to have, so that we're not sending out one survey and then another, and then maybe a third. And
what does the consultant? I mean,
they have a lot of experience in getting other plans and that to help build.
They probably have
so master plan consultant.
Yeah,
They probably have experience in
Okay.
maximizing the response.
But how do we get a survey out about like the city celebration?
Well, you can send it out to those that have signed up for notifications, so you can do that. You can include it in the newsletter to ask that. You can also, a lot of times what you'll do, because those that are highly interested are also signing up for recreation, so you take the email list out of your recreation signups and programs that you have, and you extract that email address from there, and you send it to those. And then there is, you can get, some of these firms will have abilities to have lists, or and you post it through your Facebook, you post it through your website. There's a lot of different avenues in which you reach out. So, yeah.
See,
we have a Survey Monkey. We could get a Survey Monkey subscription and put it all together, send it out. We could do a lot of different avenues of getting the word out. Maybe by radio. Maybe you put it on the movie theater. Maybe you advertise it through the movie theater. You could do from very little to very an extreme amount.
Okay.
So there is ways.
So we can do a big survey with master plans, but why not just do a little survey to get some ideas of where people stand, and not just the four of us on the city festival, or just to get a few ideas
on that survey.
Yeah, on a survey, and not a big master plan survey, but just like a little sampling of what people like or want.
What if we put in the newsletter a reference to our website, a page on our website? Please go there, give us your input regarding your festivals or celebration.
We could create a Survey Monkey thing, and that's an easy one to create. And if you have questions that you want to ask, we can do that. That's no problem.
That's kind of what I have in mind. So maybe we've been miscommunicating a little. I would just love to know where people stand, what they are interested in with these types of
We
things.
know what we want.
Right, yeah, I know what I'm interested in.
I think you'll find a master plan that some master plans are deep in tech. A master plan on Trails and Rec will do a lot of that survey. That is what they're trying to achieve. What is the recreation pieces that you want to have in your city? What does your population want? But yeah, if you want to do a little survey real quick.
Yeah, just a little
yeah.
quick survey, especially if we're behind the transportation master plan. Then.
Well, that one's funded, so that's why you're only behind it, because it's funded.
So, you know, the youth council's awesome. Fiber is moving forward.
Did they decorate the tree for Valentine's? Was that a youth council
Yes.
activity?
Oh,
No, that was
not youth
staff.
council.
No, that was just, actually, she's a person that volunteered to be on our celebration committee. And she said, I really like the Christmas tree. She said, I think we should do it for Valentine's, and I will do it, and I won't charge anything. And so we.
Who is this person so we can
I
send her a thank you
apologize.
note?
I will
That
give you
was
her name.
really, I liked it.
Yeah, it gave a sense of community.
It was, well, that's one thing we actually did get a lot of kudos
Yes.
on, was our Christmas
Tree
tree
lighting, yeah.
celebration.
And you know, I think about the car show, and I like car shows, but at the end of the day, I don't know that it's bringing the community of Providence together. I think it's bringing a lot of people in from outside of
The
Providence.
car show community.
Yeah.
That is where transient room tax comes from.
Carrie, I have one more item I'd like to talk to you about. A person
Now I get
recommended
it.
to me, and I
Now I'll
thought it
do
was
it.
a pretty good idea. Behind the theater is a bulrush pond. Water, and I checked it out, water flows from near the Stake Center over there continuously year-round. Spring Creek doesn't flow, but there's a drainage area that collects down there, water comes out, and there flows sufficient enough. I'd like to see us explore putting in a fish pond
Wouldn't that be great?
down in this area
Great
here,
master plan.
where the young people could go and do some fishing, and it's a pretty large area. I don't know what kind of complications we'd run into.
Plant fish and then plant kids and grab them with their hands.
Well, this would even be deep enough that they could fish and go down there, because not all kids like to play ball, and I think kids would
No.
enjoy fishing. And I really
Just
think
get 'em
that
off the
might have a
computers.
possibility. We'd have to put an impoundment in, and a depth of water to do fishing. I don't know, maybe I'm up in the night.
I love it.
I think there's enough water that flows, because where we're putting the bridge across up near 200 West, is it 200?
100.
100 West, there's water flowing there all the time. And that flows on down through here to Johnson's and on down, and it's not fast flowing, but hey, you know, I think it might sustain some types of fish.
We had an opportunity to get a fish pond, we thought, and had great plans for it, and then the property owner backed out on us and sold it for a lot.
I think Danes would work with us on that. Do they still own that property? The Danes family?
I think so.
I think
Yes.
on that swamp or that bulrush pond, they might work with us.
We've had 3 or 4 potential buyers talk to us about, and Scarlett always says, and I always say the same thing, it's not completely developable. One, I think it was Andy Bentley, he had some actual survey work done, engineering work, to determine what was buildable, but for whatever reason, nothing ever happens on that lot. It's not all buildable, it's got some wetlands on it.
Yeah.
But,
And by the way, that's not an original suggestion.
Well,
It came from
and
Brian.
I would love, I think there were plans explored by the previous council in purchasing some land, and I would love to discuss that when it's appropriate in an executive session. I think it has to be because it's purchasing land.
We'll see if you can donate it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's wetland.
right.
Okay, just a thought.
I love it. And we'll name the park after him.
That's right.
I have one other suggestion. When we did make sauerkraut from scratch, and we did it for 3 years, 2 years we canned it, we had youth council help us, and they were excited about it. And they showed up at the Aggie ice cream place, and the employees did the actual canning. They stuffed the cans and did all that.
The youth council wants to serve. They're
I don't
willing
know.
to help.
If
They're
they've got some
great
adults
kids.
and they've got youth that want to put in the effort, there's a recipe out there. I mean, I still have all the contacts with the state. You know, we went through the permit process. The regulations are not that difficult to follow, but, you know, it takes a bunch of effort. I still have some of the canning equipment we had from back then.
I'll also help you make sauerkraut too.
What's that?
I'll help you make sauerkraut too.
And we have a volunteer to be on your subcommittee.
If you'll take me off the other committee, I'll figure.
That's City Festival. That's Christina, and I have never tasted sauerkraut.
Oh, you have
You're a
missed that.
Providence resident, not taste sauerkraut.
It's yummy.
I've
Never
tasted
gotten a
sauerkraut,
license
so.
to that out.
I bet you've
About
never
80
come to
quarts
one
a
of our
year.
city celebrations.
I just haven't tasted the sauerkraut.
Oh, okay.
You mean the homemade stuff?
I'm scared.
Oh, no.
There's two
I served a mission in Russia.
There's two ingredients. They make you try it.
They
Salt
make me scared.
and cabbage. Two ingredients.
But they put onions in theirs and carrots.
There's hundreds of ways to make it. Anyway, let's move on. Councilman Paulson, Economic Development, League of Cities and Towns Legislative Policy Committee, EDC Utah, Cache Valley Chamber of Commerce, Cache Valley Economic Alliance.
Thanks. It sounds like a lot. It's not. I haven't been able to attend a lot of those meetings except for the ULCT Monday call, which I watch on my phone while I run at the gym. So it's been a great bundling of activities. But nothing to report. You guys should hopefully all be subscribing to ULCT's daily update that you get via text and Twitter, and I think those are helpful. When those bills get closer and out of committee and there's something happening, I'll report on it.
And there's an app for that. You can put in the bills that you want to track.
So that's it for me. Who's up next?
Councilwoman Seeley, Public Safety, Compensation, Police Compensation, Body Cameras, Justice Court. Ambassador Planning and Zoning, not a member of Planning and Zoning, Library Board, School District Liaison.
I attended the Cache County Library Board meeting in January. Kind of just got my feet wet and learned a bit how that all works. And they're exploring some things for Overdrive, trying to figure that out. I've been talking to Ryan a little bit about, so we are in charge of the facility of the library with River Heights City. And just trying to communicate with the head librarian there about what some facilities needs they have, and working with Ryan on figuring out some options for them. I've been in contact with all the school principals that service Providence, and trying to pin down an actual written land use agreement for the Uptown Park of Providence Elementary.
And
no,
Don't they own that now?
no,
Oh, I thought they did.
the city still owns it. But just try to get something formalized there. I sent them all a copy of the Utah League of City and Town essay contest, and I didn't make it to planning and zoning meetings, but they do good work. That's all I got. And I've been tracking some of the bills on public safety.
Okay. Councilman Smith, Transportation, Funding, Transit Development, Historic Preservation Commission, Cache County Emergency Management, Sims.
I have attended 2 meetings of the Historical Preservation Committee and 2 meetings of the Cache County Emergency Management meetings. And I have gathered information as to what they're trying to do, what the objectives are, and and trying how to incorporate it into Providence. And the representative of the LDS Church was there, and of course, emergency management is one of those things which have gone a lot to individual wards in with the state overall umbrella type thing, emergency management. Some wards are functioning, some are not. But there is a push on to become certified again for some of the residents. So that's something we can consider. Put together some recommendations there. The Historical Preservation Committee is finished up with the railroad in Providence, and they're going to put a plaque up. I think it's mid-March, they're going to put a plaque, a pedestal, and a plaque about the railroad, which now their direction is going to Spring Creek, or the irrigation companies in Providence, their canal system, in which I think there's 3. We identified possibly a 4th. There's the Pioneer, the Spring Creek, and the Blacksmith Fork, and possibly the Prologue, which was up on the East Bench, if that comes into it. I don't know, Scarlett, they're working to get that together, get a history established. They've made contacts with the university. Somebody's going to take it on, probably as a thesis type thing, and they will help us with, over a year's period of time, put together a history. We will utilize the Dorn Baker history of the Spring Creek Irrigation Company and to put that together. And as far as transportation, I need to get with Ryan because I don't know very much about funding or anything like that.
Couple of questions. Where's that monument going to go for the railroad?
Scarlett, do you know where that's at?
They want to work with us somewhere on Zollinger Park, because that's where I think the
Depot
station
was.
was right down there in that area.
Yeah.
SIMS. There's emergency management, and that's Will Lusk. And then there's also SIMS, and I don't know, it's a different acronym. That's the ambulance service.
SIMS is a coordinated ambulance service throughout the county, I believe. Is that correct?
It is, but Logan City has given 12 months' notice that they plan to disconnect from SIMS.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's surprising.
So the county is scrambling, and the other cities are looking to the county to step up, and they have, I don't know if they have hired an outside consultant to survey the city and look at where all the calls come from and give them some recommendations for SIMS and fire protection throughout the rest of the valley that's not covered by Logan City. And they're not making much progress, and they're not developing much in the way of consensus. And they went back to Logan City and said, can you give us 6 more months before you unplug? That's where that's at right now.
Wow.
And there is a SIMS board that meets, that's the ambulance service, and that's probably the one that we want to be tuned into.
Mayor, would
Or is
that,
it both?
where we contract directly with Logan City, would that affect us?
No, it would not affect us at all.
Direct, yeah.
So it's River Heights and Providence that contract with Logan City and Utah State.
I see North Logan is pulling in now to become part of it. Is that still true?
North Logan has had a long, for a number of years, discussions because it's very difficult to operate the fire department and police, North Park Police, with a small population and a small tax base that they have. And it's a real struggle. I mean, for North Park Police, I mean, if you think about what our sheriff has, he's got investigators, he's got detectives, besides just the patrol officers. And I mean, the police department in North Logan, North Park, it really ended up being people who wrote speeding tickets and traffic citations. If it got to a felony level or any more complicated, they had to go to Logan City or the sheriff, because they're really can't be a full service department because they just don't have the resource to do that. So that's where that's at. I don't know, it's all up in the air.
Wow.
So personally, I think in the long run, the rest of the county is going to have to step up. We have outstanding service from Logan City Fire and EMS, and I know that people that come to our city respond. They take a lot of pride in what they do and the service they provide. And it would, some other service, the other options that we considered, we went through this discussion, we could not get the level of service that we do now with response time and level of professionalism. So, but I think we ought to find out what's going on with the ambulance service too. Okay, that comes down to me. Land use. The Commission on Housing Affordability is not affordable housing. They've met and they've come up with a bill that went to the state legislature. It's $10 million in permanent funding and $20 million in one-time funding. And with the tax reform thrown out the window, it may not be funded at all. The problem I have with the Housing Commission on Housing Affordability is Senate Bill 34 from 2018 legislative session. They had a section in the legislation that said, here's the job of the commission. It was A through G, so there were seven things they were expected to accomplish in 5 years. The only thing they spent time on is the affordable housing, the low-income, moderate housing component. They have not spent any time discussing what the legislature said is find out and identify what the systemic issues are in the housing market and explore that. So there's only one of those A through G items that they've spent any time on. And I challenged the chairman, who's Senator Andring, on it. He says, oh, we got 5 years a year ago. He says, well, we have 5 years left. We're going to tackle it. So one of the co-chairs is Representative Potter, and he agreed, and he says, we've got all these people on the committee, they've got their hands out. They want the government money. Senator Andring started out when the commission first met and said, we've got a $17 billion state budget. We could spend $17 billion on trying to address the housing issue, the entire state budget, and we still couldn't solve the housing crisis. Government can't fix it. So, but it's general fund money, and there isn't much general fund money that's going to be available, so it's probably not going to get funded at all. County council, I go to every county council meeting, and the county council decided to send the COG recommendations back to the COG committee. They approved the first three, which were 3.3 million of the 5 million goes to Logan City. There's over $1 million that goes to Hyde Park and North Logan for right-of-way acquisition. The other 4 from Providence on down, including the county projects, they sent back, and they recommended the COG come back and require that every city that submits a grant application have a public hearing. The COG does not have a date to meet yet. There are some dates proposed, likely happening. The COG will meet on the 2019 recommendations sometime in March.
What does that mean? They're going to have a public hearing on whether or not the county is going to hold a public hearing?
No, the county would not. That would be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because there's 20 jurisdictions, including the county. I mean, it would take days. No, what they're going to require is each local jurisdiction that submits a grant application have a local public hearing and invite the public to comment.
On if we should.
On their
And see if they
If
have
we have an
application.
application.
And then they're going to read the notes from the public hearing or something? For 18,000?
Right. They
It
just
sounds
did-
like they're just kind of trying to pass the buck on some stuff.
Well, you're right.
Sorry, did I say that out loud?
You're right.
Okay.
And it's still being recorded and live streamed.
You're right. And part of the problem is politically, there's too much politics to get into this. And the county has its own grant applications. So there's a conflict of interest right off the bat with the county wanting their stuff funded. And it caused a whole uproar with some of these smaller cities. And I got a call from the mayor of Trenton. He chewed on my ear for 45 minutes about it. So the new COG that comes in is going to have to address a number of these issues. One of the suggestions was it really shouldn't be the county council, because this is really an administrative decision, it shouldn't be political. Is maybe there's some other, like Bragg or somebody else, that could be the final say on passing this, which means did the COG, which includes the CTAC, which involves all the cities and city representatives, and the mayors that all get together, and the hundreds of hours they put in, did they follow their own rules? Did they follow state code? Did they meet all the requirements? And so it's an administrative decision rather than ending up being a whole political thing. So unfortunately, that's where it ended up. but we may end up with a better process after the 2020 COG meets and hashes this stuff out. I just hope, because it's the mayor's and it's Craig Butters, who's the county executive, I just hope that we keep the interest of the mayors to participate in this, because there's been times that we've not had a quorum. So anyway, that's where we're at with that. Mayor's Association, we have a dinner every month. We're meeting to talk about emergency management this Saturday. Rate setting committee hasn't met. Solid Waste Advisory Board I'm now on. Since the board met, the Logan City Council said we're going to push back till July the requirement that bags be banned in Logan City, and asking the county to come up with a county-wide plan. So that's where that's at. Also, same thing that Josh does, and Ryan and I do the same. The Monday League of Cities and Towns Legislative Policy Committee, we sit online and watch what bills that come up that the league is watching, and oftentimes they'll have someone, oftentimes the author, talk about the legislation that they're sponsoring. That's where we're at. Ryan, you're up.
The staff's already made our reports, so we're good. So, and we're almost at 10 o'clock, and we're gonna have to have a.
That we.
I think we're done, because we have Scarlett on here, but I think we've covered that. So we're ready to move on to the final motion. So do I have a motion?
I move that we close the meeting.
Motion from Councilwoman Burke to close the council meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from
Everyone.
Councilman Stead. All in favor?
Aye.
I heard one, I thought I heard a name.
It was Janelle. She couldn't decide.
Motion to adjourn isn't debatable. So.
Oh, was that not?